go.
Morning.
Good morning.
Today is Monday, August the 6th, and this is the Cosmetology and Barber Board Committee meeting for Reciprocity. And so I will let everybody open their iPads to our applications. This time we have a committee meeting because we have, I think, 13 or 14 applicants. So we'll go through several of them are similar, and we will get started. Okay. Okay, you have before you an application for reciprocity for Ms. Melissa Arnold. She is our first transaction. Ms. Arnold was grandfathered in 1994. She explains in the letter that prior to that, the state of Illinois did not require a license, and she's providing proof of work in the industry during most of the time. She has work experience between 2012 and 2017. She is requesting a waiver of the practical exam. The state of Illinois didn't do either of the exams at the time. That's the reason she was grandfathered. And so she's actually asking the board if, due to her being licensed for so long, we would waive the examinations. And given her work experience and length, my recommendation would be to approve her for reciprocity.
Roxanna, I don't see any kind of complaint history or anything on her, so
No, none at all.
I'll make a motion to approve her then.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have an application for reciprocity of a cosmetology instructor license from Iowa for Mr. Chad Evans. If you give me a minute, Mr. Evans. Hi, Roxanna. Nice to meet you. How are you? Good. Sure that's read.
All right.
Thank you. Give me just a second.
Good morning, Board.
How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for coming in.
Mr. Evans is here before you to explain. He is applying actually to upgrade his cosmetology license. He was licensed in the state of Tennessee as a cosmetologist in 2015, and he wishes now to obtain his instructor piece of the license. He obtained a license in 1999 with 2,100 hours in the state of Iowa, and the instructor license in 2010 with 1,000 hours, but no practical exam. And so his request would be that the board look at his full experience. He's got letters of recommendations from 2 different schools, and he's here to answer any questions you have. He's got a job pending if we're able to approve that exam. And on your iPads on page 9 is kind of a recap of his work experience.
Mr. Evans, could you tell us roughly how long you actually worked as an instructor in Iowa? A little bit about that.
Since like 2009.
Okay, so you've worked most of that time as an instructor?
As an instructor, I've been licensed, that's correct. I haven't necessarily, there have been on and off moments. I've taught massage therapy and I've also taught spa. But cosmetology is what I'm known for as an instructor.
So he has more hours than we require for the instructor, but he's missing
the practical exam. In that particular state, they only do the theory exam, and with instructors, that's very common. They don't all have the 2. So again, the fact that he has a job, he's been already licensed as a cosmetologist here. It's the instructor piece. He's requesting that we waive that. My recommendation, based on the letters of recommendation and the time that he did have the license since 2010, would be to approve his instructor license.
I'll make that motion.
Second. We have a motion and a second to grant reciprocity for his instructor license. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Congratulations.
Thank you so kindly.
Go forth and teach.
Yes.
Teach well.
Next, you have an application for reciprocity of a cosmetology license from Wisconsin for Sandra Hull. Ms. Hull originally was licensed in Iowa also with 2,100 hours and no practical exam. She was then licensed in Florida between 1884 and 1996. Her license in Wisconsin was issued by Reciprocity in 1993. And she is currently active with that license. She is requesting that the board waive her practical exam. My recommendation would be that we approve her since she's been licensed since early 90s.
Make the motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve for reciprocity. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
We've sort of had two back-to-back of the individuals with a longevity of working and missing that practical. Later in the full meeting, we're going to discuss the possibility of cutting some of our board meetings and not meeting 9 times a year. And so what I want us to think about as we approve some of these are those applicants that have these frequent things that come up, and if we are voting consistently, maybe the possibility of not holding them back and being able to decide. And so I do have one like at the last minute, Thursday came in, would have had to wait till October, has a job, and those things will happen. And I know that with the practical exam, we don't have a cutoff date yet. What is that magical time frame to have worked so that the practical could be waived? And maybe we still wait to present them, but it's just something to think about. Maybe before if we have a minute before we wrap up, we decide if it's 15 years or 10 years. I know anyone with less than 10 years, unless the experience really is different, normally I say the board under 10 is leaning for you to take the practical, but usually the 15 years or so is when I've been presenting them. Just so something to think about if we can decide on what that timeline is to move forward. Next on your applications, you have a pending application for reciprocity of a manicure license from Georgia for Shipwean Ma. Because of a complaint and allegations of hours not in compliance with regulatory board standards for a particular school, the board voted and requested that all applicants from Georgia present their transcripts. The office has received several applicants with a transcript that appeared to be fraudulent. The subscribed and sworn date on the document and on your iPads, the first one that you'll see is on page 29. At the bottom, you can see the page numbers. The office was able to confirm with Georgia that this is not an authentic transcript. The hours in question that the applicant is asking for then substantially do not meet the reciprocity requirements. The document at the bottom left, if you note, has the date not in a normal date structure, as well as misspelled words. And so at this point, my recommendation would be that we deny reciprocity.
Make the motion to deny.
Second. We have a motion and a second to deny reciprocity. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
Application for reciprocity of a cosmetology license from Florida for Leslie Ann Nipper. The certification shows an initial license in May of 2011 with 1,200 hours and no practical exam. Work records reflect that she has worked in the industry until 2017. She provided a letter explaining why she had to take some time off. My recommendation would be that she take the practical exam. The letter is on page 43.
Motion for her to take the practical.
Second.
We have a motion and a second that she take the practical exam. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next, you have an application for reciprocity of a manicure license from California for Chris Nguyen. The transcript provided from California is for one of the schools that the State Board of California is investigating. His application states he completed 400 hours in California in 2010. This is believed to be before the problem in California took place, but we do not have an exact date from their State Board. Mr. Nguyen has also provided experience from California from 2013 through 2015. The board has certification of licensure in New Mexico by Reciprocity in 2014, showing proof that he was also licensed there. His current active license is from West Virginia, where he is currently living. We do not have that license in hand yet, but that's where he's living, and he did show an image of it. It appears that he is also licensed in California and in North Carolina. Those haven't been received in the office yet, but since the meeting in September would not take place, I decided to present him because we're going to have several of our California applicants. He's a little bit different in the fact that he's licensed in 3 more states.
Yeah, reciprocity in New Mexico, is that what you said?
Mexico, California would be his original state, and then North Carolina, so a total of 3.
California does not require the practical test?
California requires both
Oh,
exams.
they do.
Manicuring is only 400 hours instead of 600. Now, he's presented work experience, so under normal circumstances, the work experience is in lieu of the hours, and we've approved him. He would have the exams. The problem that we have now, which is the reason we're having the committee meeting, is we haven't made a final decision on the line with the California applicants, and we may before the end of this committee. They've given us a list of, I think there's 18 schools that every state has been informed are under investigation, so it's not just Tennessee. Every state's going through the same thing. And so we are asking for transcripts. Several of, I think 1 or 2 of these folks from California won't have the transcripts, so we'll need to make a decision. But if the school is under investigation, on a couple that we talked about in June, we denied those hours. And until the investigation's complete, they, in essence, their transaction, if you will, is closed because we can't take the hours, therefore the license isn't counting. In this particular case, he has licenses in 2 other states, but they are by reciprocity from California.
Yeah, so
I see.
It's
if
a
they're
tough
by
situation.
reciprocity, that's just,
Yeah. What is your recommendation?
I took the chicken way out. I didn't make one.
I'm not comfortable over approving him.
I think we have to
His
kind of
total,
decide.
if he was initially licensed in 13, I believe, is that what you said?
2010. His
20,
California
okay.
license is for 2010.
And his work history is from 13 to 15. Does he have anything more recent?
He hasn't yet, and his issue is one similar to the last one that
Right.
isn't going to be on your iPads that I'll mention. He came in at the last minute.
Okay.
He's a little bit different from, the transcript, and Sherelle's right, the transcript is signed at the bottom from 2010, but his license, again, from California is not here. If you look at his hours at the top, though, and the graduation date, it's 2009 through 2010. I believe in 2015 he possibly asked them for a transcript, and that's why they would sign it. So what he said about California lined up. We just don't have the original. His hours, his license is from 2010. He then moved to New Mexico. He also has a license in North Carolina. We don't have an exact time frame of their concerns from California. I mean, they didn't say anything prior to 2012 is okay, but for the most part, it seems to be a current occurrence.
His original license is from California.
Yes.
And everything else is reciprocity.
Yes.
You know, if a little bit of sidebar here, if he were a student transferring into my school, we'd put him on transfer monitoring, and it would tell us if his license is being used around a lot, and are those extra licenses he has, is he really using them? I'm not impugning him at all. But in a scenario like this, I can see licenses being parked in different places, different folks using them. Where is his last actual work from, Roxanne? Do we have that? What state was he working in?
West Virginia. He is still
He's still
living
in
in West
Virginia.
Virginia, so he has not moved here. I just thought he was a good one to bring forth if we can make a decision, what do we do with these? Because his move is pending. You know, he happened to decide to apply before he moved, which was very smart. And we were able to say, we have this going on, not just Tennessee, but every state with California. And in the meantime, we're going to need your transcript, which he sent. and had immediately. And so we haven't pieced all the parts. It's thinking about if it goes back to 2010, I don't know that the investigation is going to go that far back.
Well, we can't presume him guilty of something, so we have to.
His difference is the additional 2 states, but that may not mean a lot, and Ms. Coppinger's right, it's with that same original license.
We don't have a copy of his California license.
We don't, but we verified it online.
verified
We just don't have the original yet, and I don't have the North Carolina either. So all we have is what he provided the minute he applied online, which was just a few days ago,
What infractions has he had on his record?
that we could see none. But remember that some of these investigations, I mean, we went through it with Texas, we have one in Georgia right now. There aren't necessarily complaints. It's the being in compliance with the hours, the exams, and so forth.
We don't have any clue if his school was in there.
Pardon me?
His school's not being investigated?
It is.
It is.
That's why it's before you.
Okay.
Any one of the schools that are coming through, not on the list,
So,
we're
yeah.
approving. We've got to, or we'd be paralyzing our reciprocal applicants.
We make a motion to not approve until we find out further notice of what's going on with his school.
And so on the next one,
On the
which is
date.
exactly this, on the
Yeah.
next one, my recommendation
Same
is
thing.
to deny until California completes
Right.
the investigation. If the board is comfortable with those, what I would like to do to not delay people, because then they have to make a very difficult decision, is to issue that letter. Legal counsel will proof it to make sure it's okay. It's what we've done for the June meeting. It's just
Right.
we brought them all before you.
Yeah.
So if the board no longer needs to see those until California completes their investigation, our letter would simply say, because California has reported this issue, we cannot accept your hours, and therefore you don't meet the minimum requirements for reciprocity, and your license isn't, your reciprocity is not approved.
Okay, well, that's my motion.
Okay.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second that you'll send a letter to inform these applicants
And
that
that
the
can be-
reciprocity is not approved till the investigation is completed.
And that's for any further ones
And
for you
moving
to
forward,
do
if
that.
the committee's
yes.
comfortable with that, that's what we will do to not hold them to October and so forth. That letter then will be automatic.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay. So the next applicant is exactly that. This is an application for reciprocity of a manicure license from California for Nguyen. The transcript provided from California is from one of the schools that the State Board is investigating. Certification shows an initial license issued in August 2012 with 400 hours by examination. The recommendation would be to deny reciprocity until California completes the investigation.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and a second to deny reciprocity till the California investigation is completed. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Application for reciprocity of a manicure license from California for Nook Pham. The transcript provided from California is from one of the schools the board is investigating. Ms. Pham presented her educational documents before the California board shared their concerns and started the investigation. The board office submitted her to take the exams because at that point she met the educational requirements, even though California only required 400 hours. Her transcript stated that she completed 600 hours. On page 55, you'll see her transcript from California, and that is not uncommon. We've seen manicures in California do the 600 hours because most states still require that number. Because of that, she was submitted to take the Tennessee exams, and on May 17, 2018, she passed her practical exam. At this time, she is requesting that the board issue her license. So although it's the same issue with the school, we actually put her through to test, and she's tested in Tennessee. So I don't have a recommendation. She's a little bit different. She came through right before all this took place.
Did you pass the exam?
Both. You've got her theory on page 57 is her practical exam. She took it in Vietnamese, and she got a 76. She got a 73 in the theory on May the 1st. So she almost took them back to back and passed both.
She's met the requirements that we had initially set out for her. She's made an investment there, so
And if we think of that timeline, just to add to this, we would have approved anybody in May for California. We met in May, we would have approved her. So in her case, she just chose to not get a license in California and moved here directly.
In the event that her name were to pop up on a list of fraudulent cases, we can still act to suspend or revoke. I move that we grant reciprocity.
Second.
Motion and a second to grant reciprocity. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. An application for reciprocity of a manicure license from Georgia for Yen Tran Pham. The office has received several applicants with a transcript that appear to be fraudulent. The subscribed and sworn date have errors in the format, and there's spelling errors as well in the section where the notary of the transcript should be all accurate. The office has confirmed that these documents are not authentic. With the hours in question, the applicant does not substantially meet reciprocity. My recommendation would be to deny.
Make the motion to deny.
Second.
Motion and a second to deny. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Next, you have an application for reciprocity for a license from Florida for Connie, Redden, Levy. Certification shows an initial license was issued in May of 1998 with 1,200 hours and no practical exam. A letter from the shop owner states that she worked with her since 2009 all the way to 2014. She emailed the board explaining that she worked with Regis Corporation for a total of 14 years. She left the industry for a little while for medical reasons, and that is on her email on page 69, but is now in Tennessee and requesting that we waive the practical exam so she can apply for a job. In this case, I recommend that we approve her for reciprocity.
Make the motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve reciprocity. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Application for reciprocity of a manicure license from California for Tommy Tran. The transcript could not be provided because Mr. Tran states he no longer has it. However, on the application, the name of the school that he provided is for one of the schools that the State Board of California is investigating. Certification shows an initial license in May 2013 with 400 hours. Mr. Tran is also licensed in Alabama by reciprocity from California. To be consistent, I would recommend that we send the same denial letter. And we are running into this now. I can't obtain the transcript. And so Sherelle and I had that conversation. That's a little bit tough because in some situations, California may be one of them, I think Georgia is, after 5 years, the documents are no longer kept. So it is going to prove a difficult situation for those students who don't really have that transcript. But I think for those states right now, at least definitely from California, we do know the name of the school. My recommendation would be then to deny.
Make the recommendation to deny and send the letter.
Second.
Motion and a second to deny and send the letter. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Application for reciprocity of a cosmetology license from Georgia for Yen Tran. The certification shows initial licensure in May 2006 by examination. Ms. Tran states that she does not have a transcript. Georgia provided a letter explaining that their records, and that letter is on page 86 of your iPads, that their records are only maintained for a total of 5 years. Her application states that she attended Career Institute of Nail Care, but there's no proof of it. And at this point, as the board is aware, we have one school that we're obtaining documents because of one school currently under question. So. The school in question in Georgia and the situation that arose was current. It was for at least allegations of the 2016-2017 time period. We've accepted other students prior to these allegations from that school. We've stopped accepting them, I believe, since January, if I'm not mistaken, maybe February. So we have this applicant to think about because they've been licensed much longer, since 2006.
Have any work history from?
We've not asked for work history because she would meet the requirements for both exams and the number of hours. We can, if we decide that after 10 years or 12 years of licensure, or it's prior to the allegations that we received and the concern that we have from a particular school, and in this case, it's just one school in Georgia right now. And so that based on the time of licensure with work experience, the board either wants to review work experience or allows me to approve, we can go in that direction, because I know that the state board does not keep those records for more than 5 years. So we will have several in that time frame. The other thing to think about, I'm sorry, is that we still don't have an answer on, we submitted a letter to the state board asking them to conduct an investigation on the school and what the concerns were. We don't have an answer on that yet. If the committee is comfortable, I would like us to do a follow-up letter that, again, legal counsel will draft, just saying,
Yes.
we have many applicants waiting. What is the status of the investigation? Because I haven't gotten a response.
And I was going to say, kind of along those lines, Patricia, with what you were saying, that any time they show that they've substantially met the requirements of another state, they really need to be able to show that 5 continuous years of experience immediately preceding the application. And so with this particular applicant who can't locate her transcripts, I think you all would need to look at that work history to consider granting reciprocity in this instance.
We can make the motion for her if she can submit her work history and let Roxana check it out. And
So if
Are
she
you
submits
comfortable
her work history for the last 5 consecutive years, and if that's found sufficient, Roxana, to give you the authority to do that?
to make the decision.
To
Yes.
grant that reciprocity?
That's my motion.
Did you
Second.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second that we will request her 5-year work history and give Roxana the authority based on that 5-year work history to grant reciprocity. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Just a few more, thank you. This is an application for reciprocity of a cosmetology license from California for Wyn My Thread. The transcript provided from California is for one of the schools the State Board is investigating. Certification shows an initial licensure of 2017 with 1,600 hours by examination. My recommendation is to deny reciprocity until California completes the investigation.
Motion to deny.
Second.
Motion and a second to deny reciprocity. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Application for reciprocity of a manicures license from Florida for Linda Thibault. Certification shows the license was issued in September 2006 with 240 hours and no exam. Ms. Vogt provided her husband's active military orders and insurance policy to provide to prove the relationship. She provided records and an explanation of her work experience. She is asking for consideration of the exam so that she can start work soon and help support her family. She falls into the military flexibility that we have with approving these, so my recommendation is to approve her for reciprocity.
Make the motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve reciprocity. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And although your iPads look like we are done with reciprocity, I have one that just came in on Friday, so I sort of have her in paper. This is an application for reciprocity from Georgia. Her name is Maura Hovius. You don't have her on her iPads. Her Georgia license is from January 8th, 2000. It expired in March of 2012. She then obtained an Oregon license by reciprocity in October of 2010, and that license is still active. She attended Aveda school. She put that on her information. However, she's unable to provide that transcript, and she's been communicating back and forth with the school. I believe someone, because it's a school that is in different places, should be able to help her. But at this point, she's stuck and desperate because she is already in Tennessee and needing to start work. So I didn't want to hold her until October. In her case, she too falls way ahead of when the situation was there for the allegations against the school, and she's, of course, stating she didn't go to that school. She's contacting Aveda. We're going to try to help her. I don't know if the board is willing to, once we get some information, or at least the fact that on her application she's put the name of the school. We just don't don't have it, the transcript.
California?
No, it's Georgia. Georgia has right
Oh.
now one school. It's Atlanta Beauty. It goes by 2 or 3 different names until that investigation is complete. And based on our conversation, Ms. Hooper and I will put together a letter to ask for follow-up and to get a status of where that investigation is so we know. But because of those allegations, we've been asking for transcripts of everyone coming from Georgia. And in many cases, they don't have a transcript.
Make a motion if she can provide you the transcripts from the school, that you go ahead and make the decision to approve.
She can't right now,
No,
so
she
what do we
can't.
do if she
Do
can't?
we have her work
Her
history
work
for the last
history.
5?
I can do the same thing because
Yeah.
we just voted on one. As long as we have work history for the last 5 years, and we should, then we can approve her. Okay. A motion from Ms. Patricia?
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second that we request that her 5-year work history, and then give Roxana the authority to grant reciprocity based on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
That does conclude the Reciprocity Committee meeting. I appreciate it. We have a motion to
Let
adjourn?
me ask you one question.
Oh, yes. Hold on.
The fraudulent documents that had the misspellings and
Yes.
Were they both from Georgia?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and the same school. So, and we found this before. We had it with Wisconsin, if the board remembers, and I know North Carolina had a mess for a while. They start coming in 2, 3, 4 numbers, and then the minute the letter goes out saying this document's not the real transcript, they stop. So,
What do you think about the years of work experience?
It's the whole board will have to vote
We'll have to talk
on that.
on which piece?
On
Oh, for the
Granted-
practical?
Practical,
Yes, I
yes.
think when we give the committee meeting to the full board and kind of tell them what we have. So I believe we ended up with 14, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 15. I'll recount them so we have the exact number of how many we presented. But if we can come up with that timeline to waive the practical, if everything else is met, if we've got the work experience or the right number of hours, I think that will move some applicants in a consistent way. And then if they don't have that time frame and they still want to be presented to the board, they wait till the next meeting and we present them. That's good. Okay.
Thank you. Reciprocity Committee is complete, right?
Yes.
We're done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Roxanne.
We are starting with the complaint committee meeting. It is almost 9:45, and I will turn it over to the litigating attorney for this program, Ms. Pamela Spicer. It's all yours.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello, Pamela.
I hope you've had a chance to review the legal report because there's 82 complaints, as you can see. Part of that is because there's no meeting in September, so sometimes when there's not a meeting the following month, it adds to the number of complaints that I need to present. I don't have any that particularly stand out. There are a few that I do want to mention. 39 and 40, which is on page 13 and 14. This individual's on number 39 license has been revoked, so we're at the end of our rope. So I'm requesting that a referral be made to the appropriate state agency for state court action if necessary.
Each 39 and 40?
Yes, case
Okay,
number
I'm
39.
I was looking for page.
And then number 40,
13.
On case number 4, regarding the apprenticeship program, do we have any more information about that?
I don't, other than what was submitted with the complaint. And then, of course, the school provided a response.
Were you done with 39 and 40?
I was just going to say on number 40, case number 40, my recommendation is revocation of the shop license due to the complaint history.
Make a motion to agree with council.
Second. Amy usually does this, so I'll withdraw my second. We need a second so I can do this.
Second.
Okay. Sorry about that, folks. We have a motion and a second to have a revocation on item number 40. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries.
Case number 62, it looks like there may be some information missing. It says there's a case, but I don't have any information.
I will double check on that for the full board meeting, but sometimes on 62 and 63, if it's the owner and a shop, I combine the summary into one, especially if the recommendation would be to close. It would be to close both complaints, but I will double check on that to make sure.
Okay, thank you.
Because it does say the shop and its owner, so likely 63 is the owner and 62 is the shop. But again, I will double check and confirm with that.
Pamela, on case number 43, it says the license was first obtained in May of 2018 and that it expires in September of 2018. It's probably just a typo on that.
That is a school. I'll double check that.
That would be
history,
accurate
but
if it's a
I think
school.
it may be accurate.
Yes.
If Roxana says it is accurate, then it is.
All cosmetology schools expire September 1st of that year.
Okay, so that
So
was just a short license.
That's exactly right.
Wow, okay.
That's exactly right. We've made a few exceptions for the July schools. Sometimes in August, I'll let them know you're going to get a license and expire, but anything prior to that, they would, because generally speaking, they've applied a month or so prior to that. So, yeah, it expires.
That's just to keep them on the proper renewal.
They renew every year, and yes, all together. That's just how the cosmetology school statute. The Barber schools are different. They renew every year as well, but throughout the entire year. So they may renew on February 3rd. It's not the end of the month, and it's not all together.
On case number 50, so they were practicing in a restaurant?
That is the information that we have. That is why I think the best thing to do, because we have very limited information about this, and it's actually number 49 and 50, where it says these two complaints are from the same complainant alleging unlicensed activity in a restaurant. The problem is the complainant gives us two different addresses. So I think the best thing is to close these complaints since they come from an individual and send our inspector out to inspect and see if this is really happening. because we really need more information. I don't have a name or anything. I just have a complaint. I don't have a name of what the shop's called. I don't have a name of what the restaurant's called. So we need to send the inspector out to the 2 addresses listed and see what's going on.
2 address meaning the person and the shop?
No, there were 2 addresses listed in the complaint as if it's either 2 different restaurants, or maybe the person was confused about the addresses. That's what I mean by that, is there's not enough
No name of a
information.
facility, just the address.
Correct.
I got you.
On case number 60, when I read that one, I hate to see any time that our inspectors are not treated well whenever they go out. Do you recall what we may have done in any previous situations we've had like this? Has there been a small fine with that, or is if this is the first account?
To be honest, I'm drawing a blank. I think that the issue could be, I know I can speak of one complaint that we've had in the past, which I think ended up being closed with a letter of warning, and that particular complaint had to do with someone that actually showed up here. But it doesn't matter where they were, just to give you a frame of reference. I don't know of any others that we've had, unless Roxana can think of any. The only one that I can think of was closed with a letter of warning regarding the unprofessional behavior. The problem is, yes, we don't want to treat this lightly, but we also could get into an issue at litigation with a he said, she said, unless there's a physical altercation, which makes it a lot more clear as to what's going on. And that was the situation we had with the other complaint that was closed with a letter of warning. Basically, it is unprofessional behavior, but that is sometimes hard to prove when you get to litigation, and ultimately then becomes.
Our inspectors, okay.
And I think we have seen this in 1 or 2 shops and sent, kind of a strong letter of warning that they're doing their job and that they do have to come in and inspect and so forth. But I don't think we've ever done anything more than that. That's not to say that we couldn't if it happened again. So that letter's on the record. Yeah. The hope is it won't happen again. That's so they can do their job.
And the letter of warning does provide us with the documentation we would need if it did happen again.
Right.
Then we could issue the penalty.
Okay.
Same with the other individual. That person was warned if this happens again, there'll be a penalty.
I think maybe the last one that I had looked at pretty hard was case number 78. And in this case, if the respondent was not the manager, then it appears that shop was operating without a manager, which that might be another citation.
I think one issue with that could be is that it would be difficult for us to go back in time and determine what happened. I have actually spoken to this respondent. She has provided documentation that she wasn't the manager. I don't know what the confusion was when the inspector came in, but I don't really know how we would go back in time to determine if there was a manager there or not.
Did she sign the inspection report as the manager or the acting manager?
She signed the inspection. Well, let me back up. I can't be 100% certain that she signed it. It could appear to be her signature, but you know how that is. I don't know specifically. My guess is she would deny that she signed it because she's denying that she was the manager. I have been in communication with her even as recently as the end of last week. And the issue, again, would be to go kind of back in time. We would have to close this complaint because this complaint is opened against the individual. If you all decided to open a new complaint, I don't really know how we would go back in time to determine was there a manager, was there not a manager. there or not, because I don't know who was present in the shop at the time. We could open and we could close this and have an inspection, close with an inspection to see if there.
I really didn't want to complicate it, and I agree with you. We don't know who was there, but in my mind, if there were more than one person, I can see there's a lot of confusion. If she was the only person or he was the only person on the premises at the time, maybe that's a de facto kind of thing, is what was in my mind. However, no, I agree with your recommendation. I was just curious about the other side of that.
No previous infractions from this establishment?
I would have to double check against the establishment because the complaints opened against the individual. So that also begs the question of there was no, that I know of, notice of violation issued to the shop, which causes an additional question in my head, which seems to beg the question that this needs to be closed, and if you all would prefer a inspection occur, we can send someone out to inspect. But kind of begs the question as to what happened as far as with the shop. There was no complaint that ever made it to me, let me say it that way.
I think with the ability of not being able to go backwards, we take your recommendation to close, but still keep an eye on it and do send an inspector.
Send an inspector to the shop.
Yeah.
Because I can determine what shop it is, and we can send an inspector.
Yeah.
Okay. You all do have 81 and 82, numbers 81 and 82. I just wanted to make sure the full report made it to you all.
Those two were added after I emailed everyone, so that you've not had a chance to see those two.
Pamela, on case number 82, do we know if they have surrendered that license or just closed up shop?
The only information I have is that the school is closed. I don't know of any surrendering of the license. I would have to check with the board office on that. That doesn't, a lot of times they don't surrender their license when kind of like when a shop is closed,
Right.
they're not necessarily surrendering their license, but they've closed their operations. Of course, these are older complaints. So if we can locate this individual, I don't know whether we can or not as far as asking for surrender of the license, but I think that could involve a hearing because he doesn't necessarily have to.
If he were to pop up somewhere else and just open up and start practicing, then we'd be able to.
Correct.
care of
That's
that
why.
then.
Yes. Correct. That's why we're doing close and flag on that
All right.
because there's been no other activity. Just so you know.
Becky, did you have any other questions?
It's
Bill, do you need a motion for anything on this one, or?
Yes.
Okay.
And if I can have a motion to approve the entire legal report, numbers 1 through 82, and then I will double check on number 62 to make sure, but I'm certain that that's probably the shop and the owner, but I'll double check that for the full board meeting.
I'll make a motion to accept all legal counsel for numbers 1 through 82.
Second.
A motion and a second to accept the legal report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we are adjourned. It is 10 o'clock. The full meeting will start at 10:30.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Betty. Just pause it. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Roxana. If everybody's ready, we'll get started. This meeting of the State Board of Cosmetology and Barber Examiners is now open. We will begin our process by having a roll call, but just before we do that, I'd like to recognize and introduce our newest member, Ms. Janie Ross. Welcome to the board. We're glad to have you, and thank you for being willing to serve. Okay. We'll have a roll call.
Thank you. Ms. Kelly Barger. She is on her way. I think traffic that we're all familiar with is holding her back, so she should be here shortly. Mr. Jimmy Boyd. Miss Anita Charlton. Miss Nina Coppinger. Here. Mr. Frank Gambusa.
Present.
Mr. Ron Gillihan.
Here.
Miss Brenda Graham.
Here.
Miss Whitebeck Granger.
Here.
Thank you for joining us telephonically. Miss Judy McAllister.
Present.
Miss Patricia Richmond.
Present.
Miss Becky Russell.
Here.
Miss Mona Sappenfield. Miss Amy Tanksley is not here. And our newest member, Miss Janie Ross. Welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to take just a moment and recognize our visitors and guests. Thank you all for coming out and taking part in your board meeting today. It's our custom and practice here to recognize the schools that come down. So if you're someone representing a school, if you would just please stand up and tell us your name, your school's name. Thank y'all for coming down. We hope you have a good time today. Is there anybody else? Okay. Okay. We would need to have an approval of the June 4th, 2018 meeting minutes. Do we have any additions, corrections, or deletions? We have a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the June 4th, 2018 meeting. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries. Ms. Roxanne, that brings us up to you.
Thank you. First appearing before the board, we have a school. This is Professional School of Beauty. It is a new hybrid apprentice program they are presenting for you. You have before you Ms. Rashida Jones and Ms. Claudette Franklin. This school is already licensed as a cosmetology program, and they are wanting to present an apprenticeship online piece for the coursework for the theory hours. The information will be presented to you based on the projectors you're seeing. I don't know if a few of the members will need to move a little bit to be able to see, and then ask any questions you have. In the past, we've asked for some of this information to be tested, so I'll leave that up to you all, but they are happy to be able to show us what they've got. Ms. Jones, I'll let you go ahead and walk them through it.
Good morning. Let me apologize. I think we have a short in the cord, but hopefully we can get through as much of it as we can. But what we're here today to present, myself and Ms. Franklin, is a hybrid approach to the apprenticeship model, which is inclusive of an online or digital platform. It also includes the apprenticeship hands-on training in the salon, and then we would finish out with some live classroom as we move into the exam prep piece of the coursework. We are presenting this for the specialty programs that include the Master Educators program, the Manicures program, the Aesthetics program, and not at this time the Natural or the Full Cause. But for purposes of example today, we are using the Master Educators program to give you guys the, full look at what this curriculum looks like. The platform that we are using is called MindTap. We have a short video. Do we have time? It's about 4 minutes.
Yes, you have
Okay,
time.
let's see if we can get that. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, I think it was just planted.
Facebook postings as sources in student work.
Because that's fun.
So can we get it to go louder?
Turns cookie cutter into cutting edge, apathy into engagement, and memorize.
How did you get to do that?
Through the brief
I love sending my students to 5 different locations in order to complete one assignment.
I love waiting an entire semester to find out a great information about one of the paid student work.
Student guide. That's why there's MindTap. MindTap.
All right, there's like a short in the device here. A short. Is this? We just can't seem to get the sound working. We'll move forward. Basically, the MindTap platform is the digital platform that My Lady uses for their digital offering and their ebook through Cengage. And so this platform does allow us to be in keeping with the books that are associated with the exam for PSI. So all of this follows along that outline for the testing. And this does not differentiate any of our resources or learning materials for the hybrid model. So essentially, MindTap, the video was just going to explain that piece of what MindTap really is. Fast forward into the actual piece of it. I'm not sure if everybody got the package that we sent out, but we included the description of the hybrid model and how we would actually use it. So when we go into the online platform, students would access it. Students would access it through a link that they would be provided once registered. This is the website. The link would be provided through here. We've already got it pulled up, so we'll actually go into the course. So essentially what happens here is with the apprenticeship model, the student would go through the learning platform. Students would go through the learning platform through each of the activities and chapters. This is the getting started. And beyond that, it actually goes into, it lays out exactly as the book does. It lays out exactly as the book does. However, we are able to customize it and add activities as necessary that we want completed in addition to the reading and the activities that are structured in the book. And I'll show you that as soon as we get the short. Okay, so this outlines basically all the chapters. My goodness.
Screen, and I saw
Changing on.
it's obvious to me a massive time saver.
Gone are the days of studying in a dorm room or
That's
library.
pretty good when it's
Students' hectic
unplugged.
schedules require tools that support their on-the-go lifestyles.
I think my biggest struggle as a college student is studying on time. Today's student is overwhelmed. Students come to me with a different level of technical knowledge.
So it's kind of an odd mix of experience levels, life experience, and maturity.
Big struggle is time management and juggling.
MindTap's Read Speaker reads chapters aloud for students who learn best through listening or need to learn on the go. And the new MindTap mobile app allows for unparalleled flexibility by helping students stay in touch and study for exams anytime and anywhere.
A lot of talk now. I love it. One of my students said to me, I wish I had my course. Because a lot of students these days study on the go. So if I'm on BART,
Works well when it's unplugged, guys. I'm sorry. Okay, so this follows the book exactly. I almost just don't need to touch. This follows the book exactly. What this does is it gives them a platform in which we can structure classroom and interactivity. We do our orientation, this piece as well, through video format. But the format of the hybrid course, I think is a kind of a segue into what we hope will be an online approach. But I think it's first important that we figure out if the online model actually will work with the curriculums of the cosmetology program. So this is kind of our segue into looking at a virtual or digital platform in full. But we take that same curriculum that we've already had approved and we move it into a digital platform. The way we monitor that, and I have this that I can pass around since we can't really pull it up on the screen, but what MindTap and My Lady provide is what's called an accreditation report, which I know is exceptionally important to you all as it relates to the tracking of the hours. This detailed report, I think you have one as well we can pass around. If anybody wants to actually see, because I can't pull it up.
Was it in your packet?
No, this was a part of this was part of the presentation that you said you could look at prior. But that particular document is a reporting function that gives us a very detailed look at what the student reporting is. So when that student goes dormant in the learning platform, that program logs them out within 5 minutes. It also logs how much time they're spending in each activity, what timeline they're on to take it. And this allows the educator to look at if they're tracking on time to complete those courses on time, or if we need to implement a CAPA or a corrective action plan to make sure that student is tracking within the framework of the online or digital platform piece. Because we're not losing sight of the fact that we want these students, when they come into the program, whether it be the digital component, live classroom, or the apprenticeship, we want them to track on time for completion. If it's a 6-month program, we want them to finish that program in 6 months. And so their reporting function, or the accreditation report, is My Lady calls that, gives us a detailed kind of tracking of how long they're spending in an activity, how long it's taking them to complete, what's mastery, how much time they have left in those actual each module that they're actually performing in, and that gives us quite a bit of insight. But this is also how we're reporting or recording those hours as it relates to getting State Board what they need. This is not a report that any instructor can generate. We don't manage it. We can't alter it. We have to actually go to MindTap and they send us this report. So it is a true what they call accreditation piece to actually track the time management function of those clock hours. So we have no way of altering it. We have to request it and they give it to us. Beyond that, once they've actually completed the digital platform piece, similar to the apprenticeship model, they will come back in under the Master Educators Program. We'll actually come back in and do our live exam prep with them, particular to whatever their instructor component is. So if they're doing natural stylist instructor program, in the packet that you did receive, we're actually structuring their exam prep to those topics that State Board has identified their lesson plan will come from. We're also bringing them back in to actually prepare their lesson plans and present those to classes, in addition to part of the activity structure being that they actually go through the process of creating the lesson plan. The hours are allotted for that, uploading those lesson plans, and then having us peer critique, and the educator critique to go back and rework those lesson plans, because this is what they'll be presenting as their capstone.
Really just want
their capstone course for actually getting ready to test out of the program. Similarly, so with the manicures program and aesthetics program, the digital platform will be for preparing them for the theory portion of it. So the digital platform will all be done, all the book work will be done in the learning platform, and then we'll bring them in for exam prep. They'll actually test with State Board, pass before, of course, moving into the approved apprenticeship model with the hands-on training. Once that's complete, we bring them back in the physical classroom setting for hands-on exam prep again. So that's the approach through the hybrid model. That's what we're looking to get approved today.
Questions?
And once they finish, you're saying you'll bring them back to the school for their hands-on portion?
Yes, for the exam prep portion.
Because once they did the 350, they're out of, half of the time they're out of the school, right, with the apprenticeship?
Yes, so they're not out of the program. So our program model ensures that we're working with a salon that actually has the ability to work with us on making sure that those components and that checklist are met for the apprenticeship model. So we don't release them into the world. We're still tracking and working with whomever they're working with under their apprenticeship. And hopefully they're tracking those hours so that if the program is a 6-month program, they've done the theory portion of it, they've passed that portion of the exam, they've moved into the apprenticeship model, they're tracking to complete those hours on time. And so we're still very much engaged once we bring them back into the exam prep piece, which is live classroom.
I could just correct a couple of things. So there's not hopefully they're tracking hours. The professional with 10 years of licensure or more, not the shop, is responsible for 100% of the tracking of hours and must track hours and must report them to the school by the first of the month. So that would be a given. That can't change. That's just part of the apprenticeship rule. And then it's not the salon that you're working with. It's the one-on-one with the person, that professional with 10 years or longer, just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Am I understanding that you're relying on the Mind Tap program to really just be a self-directed, self-fulfilling thing that the student does? I didn't hear you talk very much about how much an actual instructor is engaged during the course of these programs.
So the instructor is accessible, and part of the package that was presented also includes, with us introducing this hybrid model, the addition of a Wi-Fi center and interaction space for them to actually meet up with the instructor as needed and have hands-on. The instructor is not removed from the process and actually is the administrator of the entire MindTap piece of it. So the digital learning platform is actually governed and managed. She still goes in and looks at whether or not they're tracking on time. Perhaps we have someone that's a little bit delayed. The instructor can go in and actually delay their ability to go to other assignments until we get them on track with what they have. So very much managed by a licensed instructor who's overseeing the platform.
There won't be any real face-to-face or computer screen to computer screen kind of visual interaction.
Yes, so part of the program also has some mandatory dates involved where we use Join Me, which is a WebEx style platform. And so we also include those mandatory times of peer-to-peer interaction and also getting with the.
If you'll make sure that your light's red. Thank you. Perfect.
So there's also the mandatory webinar sessions that we have structured in the curriculum that does give that face-to-face time in addition to that peer-to-peer learning and engagement that's required. So for instance, there may be an activity in one of the activities that the instructor has built the curriculum around where there's actually going to be question and answer where, for instance, if a student asks, she's required to ask one question related to the piece of curriculum that we're on. And so a student has to respond to at least 3 questions to that student in order to get graded for that particular piece of the assignment. The instructor will structure her web meetings throughout each module of the course, but yes, we do have a component that will allow a digital face-to-face interaction, and then of course bringing them back in as necessary if we have to implement those corrective action plans to make sure that the student is matriculating timely.
What percentage of that face-to-face interaction would you say is part of that course?
So there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I believe the curriculum is structured now is that for each module, meaning each chapter, there is at least one interaction that is to occur with the instructor where they would log in and discuss what they've learned purportedly at the end of that, when they should be finished with that module. So it's a mandatory log on time in order for them to get credit for attendance in that, but at least one interaction during each chapter.
Are we talking about an hour, or are we talking about 6 hours in a chapter?
Yeah, so depending on the depth of the chapter. For instance, the first chapter is a very evasive chapter. It doesn't go into any length. I would imagine that the interaction would at minimum be an hour for the course, because you want to give students a platform that if there are questions, that at least those students logging in have an opportunity to hear the lecture that's being presented, but also to ask questions. But that time would be modified and structured based upon the depth of the chapter.
Would that be a scheduled time that's going to happen consistently during the day? I'm envisioning a student going online at midnight and doing something and needing access to an instructor.
Absolutely.
What's your plan for that?
So the beauty of the digital platform is that the student does have access to the platform 24/7. However, those mandatory classes are a part of the syllabus, if you will, when we structure that initial class. So you'll know well in advance that you need to be available August 15th at 2 p.m. because I have a mandatory face-to-face class, basically, is what it is. And so they're structured throughout the syllabus itself, so the student, when they enroll, they understand that those are their obligations to the course.
The mandatory face-to-face, that's still...
It's a digital.
I'm still in my house online.
Yes. So let me also make a couple points with that question. The students, part of the program is that they get these really nice small, this is actually a computer that they get. As a part of their enrollment, which is what MindTap offers as a part of the digital curriculum. It has the webcam so that they are extended the opportunity for video recordings and uploads. It's touchscreen, it's very user-friendly, and it goes straight to the learning platform in which they are to do the classwork. In addition to this being a part of the curriculum, we also have the, I just lost my train of thought there. In addition to this being the key, we also have in the Student Learning Center the list of free locations where they can access the internet. We also have the Comcast as a part of the contract. So we have a few resources for them to get internet access. We're providing the equipment for them. But in addition to that, part of what I have in my proposal is the use of a Wi-Fi center, which is about a mile away from the actual school where it sits now, because we want to make sure that we have a location where we set hours where if they don't have internet access at home, that they're able to come in, access it, and also sign up for time to interact with the instructor as necessary. So this would be what we call our Wi-Fi and Learning Center as well, so that they do, like you mentioned, the digital access there is important, that they have resources to actually do that piece of it.
This is totally new for us, right? All this? Is this
The
totally
thing
new?
about the apprenticeship, I thought was set up so that they were with an instructor for that short amount of time, like 750 hours. So they were confident in everything they were learning.
So the apprenticeship is 50% of the
Right.
hours. So regardless of the curriculum, is theory, and it is
50%.
viewed as in a school.
Right.
It doesn't say face to face.
Right.
So it
In
doesn't
the school.
leave out this, but it doesn't. It's not written in a way that this is a given, but it doesn't leave it out. What the board did write in the rules are that the theory must come first. You must test and pass it in order to go on to the face to face with the professional.
That way they're ready for the workforce after their 750 hours. My concern is, will they be getting everything they need over the internet and just being monitored on certain times? Where, like, if you did it in the school, you've got an instructor there with them all day. If they're moving faster through some chapters and ready to test, or if they're not, if they're moving too fast, you have to slow them down. How are you going to monitor that?
I think I spoke a little bit to that earlier, but and I also want to point out, this MindTap platform is a platform that my lady has used probably about 6 years now. So it's not new, and there are a lot of schools actually using this. Probably not. They don't use it only. I mean, this is, even if I were to allow for live classroom, this could still very well be the platform in which we're actually implementing a curriculum. What we're hoping to do is to give them a little more freedom and power to say, okay, great, I have an opportunity to set hours flexibly, but I do still have the access to an instructor as needed. So this is not a full approach to an online do away with the instructor model. So relative to management, she's still very much connected to those students. There has to be monitoring. There has to be a process in which she's going in timely to grade papers and answer questions and so forth and so on. I, too, am a product of having received a master's in secondary education through an online platform, in which you do have, as an adult learner, there has to be some discipline there. There has to be some commitment from the learner. However, I did feel very comfortable with reaching out to my instructors as needed if there was not clarity. But the process of following a syllabus, the structure of making sure that assignments are met, is still the responsibility of the adult learner. I would say digital platforms are not for everybody. Some people are not necessarily comfortable with technology or uploading a video, and those are things that we have tutorials to assist them with if this is the way they want to go. We're not doing away with the apprenticeship model that offers the live classroom and the hands-on apprentice in salon under the professional training, but this, I think, is a way to kind of engage those people who need the additional time and flexibility, especially with the instructor program, because these professionals are actually behind the chair most of the time. And what we found in our research is that if there was a platform that allowed them greater access to the curriculum, that they would be willing to finish that more timely. We get students that come in who aren't able to complete the program, or perhaps they have to move around clients because that's their livelihood. And so we're hoping to offer this as an extension of an option. But I think the management of the classroom does not change, and the responsibility that the educator has does not change.
I'd just like to share my thinking. I think if us as an industry in general and us as a board are going to be relative and actually try to get more relative to what's going on in the real world, I think we got to take this under consideration heavily. I'm a face-to-face kind of learner, but my son graduated high school with basically more online than he did in the classroom, and he thrived. Now, that wouldn't have worked for my daughter, but it worked for him. And what I'm hearing here, this is not a one-size-fits-all, but it is an opportunity for somebody who might be an adult, who has commitments and other situations where they can't just be going to school all the time. So I think it's very viable, and I think it's something that we really need to consider to move forward as an industry in general.
I agree with Frank, but we had an experience with some online continuing ed that once it was implemented, there were a lot of critical flaws in the program. So I think maybe if there's any critical flaws with this, we won't know until it is implemented. So, I'm all for online because I too have taken online courses and they were excellent. And but I just think the unknowns. That's what bothers me. And we didn't know about these flaws in this other program until it was, implemented. And then they had to go back and we had to go, whoa, wait a minute, this isn't working, because it did affect the integrity of this business. So, and I have one question for Roxana. Is there an apprenticeship program for instructors?
So the apprenticeship program for instructors, I think if we look prior to the law for apprenticeship passing, has always been the junior instructors are kind of apprentice, because they have an opportunity to work hands-on if they're going that route, and start teaching almost immediately under a supervising licensed instructor. So they are kind of that apprentice. There is nothing in the law that says an apprenticeship, maybe 50% for the instructor. That's not to necessarily say we rule them out, but so far we've pretty much, I think, looked at the thought that the 300 hours are those theory hours to get you ready to pass a very difficult exam. Splitting them and just making 150 about the book, would be hard, because if you're doing a junior instructor program, it's at the most 1 year. So you could, in a school, be a junior instructor for 3 to 6 months or 8 months. The school's going to release you to test when you're ready, if you're coming into being an educator as a junior instructor. The Barber program has similar with the Barber instructor assistants. They have up to 3 years to finish, and they're working under a licensed instructor. So this would be different, to let the instructors do half of it in this online piece, and then I guess half is the plan to bring them into the school to teach.
So, point of clarification, with the Master Educators program, that is not a half and half program. What that is, and it's actually in that packet that you have, what it is we have 260 hours that are done in the digital learning platform, which is the book, which is covering the activities of the book. We bring them back in various formats for the exam prep, which includes junior instructor, but also preparing them based upon the lesson plans that may come their way depending on their particular discipline. So if they're in for a natural stylist instructor license, we're going to build the exam prep based upon what PSI candidate book says are going to be the topics that they pull from. But it is not a half and half on the Master Educators program. When we were initially approved, it was not that either. This is essentially the same hours, the same book, but it's just moved from being in a physical classroom setting into the digital platform. And if I can speak to the continuing education, because I'm aware of some of those issues, I think one of the fallacies of that particular model was they built it themselves, but did not necessarily build it in a way that the structure made sense. We're not building this ourselves. This is the My Lady book that we have used as a state for many, many years. It is spot on to the exam model. It's spot on to the curriculum. It's spot on to the outline laid out by PSI. So we're not creating or reinventing the wheel. We're just looking to implement the curriculum in a more flexible fashion for learners.
I'm looking at your hours that you have here, and it seems that you're going to break down 260 hours in that particular course for online classroom and 40 hours for the practical prep. How did you come up with that division of time?
A few things with that. When we initially set out to get an approval as a school, we worked with a core group of educators and licensees to kind of go over the curriculums with us when we presented in October of 2016. And so initially that curriculum that we spelled out based upon working with educators who've been doing this for well over 20 years, we developed that timeline based upon that. But one of the other things that is provided by My Lady and the MindTap piece are timed outlines. So they actually provide us the course curriculum outlines that actually lay out how much time each student should be spending, you as an educator, how much time you should be dedicating to that in the classroom setting. And so there are some components that go along with this model and resources for educators that My Lady has instituted with this. It's not scripted just for this. This is how they work the book in Psalm.
Ms. Granger, I heard your voice. You had a question?
Yes, I don't really have a question. I just have a comment. This is Yvette Granger speaking. I think with being industry forward in the online classes coming up, I do agree with Frank that this should be taken into a large consideration, because a lot of adults are finding it hard to go back to school or to gain their instructor's license because of their livelihood and the things that they're obligated to in their family and their already work life. There are so many people that I've come in contact with that want to start a second career, but they do not have the time and flexibility to do so. So I just want to put my input in and say I think that it is something that should be considered greatly. And then going back to the continuing eds online, that where there have been issues after the fact, thank you, Ms. Rashida, for clarifying that you're just trying to add on to the wheel and not building the wheel. And sometimes the most successful things we don't see until it happens. So I don't think that we should be too afraid to just give it a try and see what happens, because there are a lot of individuals that would go back to school if they had more flexibility to do so. And that's all I have to say on that piece.
I'd like to say that after looking at different programs online, I've never been against an online program. I too have taken online classes that have worked well for me. We got almost stuck in this, in that it's written into the law how much time has to be spent doing that. And our problems with the past online curriculums is that the timing just was not there and was not monitored properly, so we were able to skip through information. I will say that in my own classroom, as I'm teaching a theory lesson, I actually use an online platform. So I'm delivering the information, but I'm using it through an online platform. I am, as the administrator of that program, able to log on and see exactly the time that was logged on, the time that was logged off, and again, if I go dormant. So I'm not moving or interacting or doing whatever. I know this. My students also have access to that online. While we don't give them hours for time being at home, I can log on and find out, did a student study for a test last night? And I do that on a frequent basis because I want to be able to tell my students, people who are studying at home using this online platform are doing considerably better than those who are not. So I can actually log on, not only see the time that was spent, but I can see the tests that they've taken, the scores that they've made, if they've gone back and reviewed information. So I know that there are good online resources out there that will allow us to see the exact number of hours that are being tracked. So I don't want us to think that all of these these issues will be a problem for every online platform that we see. I think maybe it would be worth looking into, and I'm really impressed with the accreditation report. As long as we can find out that a student is indeed, if they're not active on that screen, that they are being logged off. As long as we can see that, then I'm very happy to see that. Where other online platforms that we've looked at, you're not logged off. You can be logged on for many hours without actually being there and present. I think that this is worth looking at. I'm very interested in the webinar portion of this, to see that the instructor has interaction with the students. I do have a question about the webinars. So if I miss that webinar, is there a makeup session, or is there a model where you would say, if you've missed so many sessions, this would fail you from the course? So what would be the repercussions of not attending the webinars?
So part of the handbook and the policy piece, the makeup hours doesn't change. So our standard language as it relates to being a student's responsibility and also to get an approval for makeup hours is still the same written language in our handbook that they're provided. Relative to the actual webinar itself, once the webinar is completed, students can still access it because it goes into the archives where their particular lesson is still accessible. Relative to how we factor students who just simply do not participate, the way we have it structured now, you're only going to get 100 points for the mandatory course offerings. If a student does not initiate the webinar, going back to review the tape, we can actually see that in the system that they've gone through and watched it. But it's 100 points. So if you have a 1,000-point semester, it's 100, each one is 100 points. So if it's 100 points, just for example, they're going to miss those points unless they've notified us as to their reason and have already been approved to receive credit for what they viewed. So, the language doesn't change, but we have to manage that in moderation, of course, with framework of what that student situation was. So.
Do you have any other questions? And Roxana, she's seeking approval to offer this program.
She is, simply because our curriculum is pretty, the apprenticeship is wide open, but nothing to date brings up the online instruction. And so anytime we've had anyone interested, we have suggested that they come before you. So that is the reason. She would not need it for the apprenticeship. It's simply that the theory hours would be offered in this format.
Won't be approved by the Department of Ed and NACAS and stuff for financial aid.
So these are still the specialty programs in which the hours will take a factor, and also the age of the program with regard to accreditation. So at this time, we're not an accredited institution. We're just seeking to get this done. I will say that I do carry a master's in secondary education personally, and so part of our process is not to come before you with something that hasn't been vetted through seasoned instructors that offer curriculum at other institutions. And also, just from an educational standpoint, I do have a background in curriculum writing, and so so we're trying to substantiate the program and maintain a level of professionalism there.
For myself, I have to say I think the board has always been very willing to embrace these new ideas, and I think we're all very interested in the opportunities for electronic medium and online delivery of the curriculum basis that we can. I still personally have a lot of concerns about oversight and concerns about how we're going to quantify in an appreciable way the time that a student spends actually engaged with an instructor, because again, and I know it's two different models, but I believe it's always sort of been understood that the time that a student spends in school to date has been with the understanding of one instructor for no more than 15 students on the Barber side and 20 on the Cosmo side. So, yes, online and electronic is a wonderful thing, in my opinion. I think we've all experienced it and done some things with those. There are models that work. I'm not sure that, from what I've heard today, that we have enough direct supervision of the students. I don't know enough information about how we're going to make sure that student has access to an instructor. If you walk into a brick and mortar, they can walk up to an instructor at any time during the class, get assistance, not just be handed a book, go sit in the classroom, and now your education is all on how well you can read and watch the movies and videos. So I know that personal interaction is still a component, whether it's the full Cosmo or whether it's the instructor component. It's not for me to build your program and decide. It's for you to present it and then convince us, I guess. At this point, I applaud your efforts, but I don't know that I've heard enough yet. That's just my opinion. So,
but Ron, if I could just speak to the piece of needing that kind of face-to-face in order to get that kind of result, I think that's why we have tests. I think the test is going to be the deciding factor, because if they're not doing the work that's necessary, especially with Becca's results of the people who are spending more time on it are getting the results, and people that aren't. I think the market's going to bear whether it's effective or not. I feel extremely comfortable with the preparation and presentation. If we're going to give this a shot and give it a try, I think you couldn't have done a better job making me feel like if we're going to test it with somebody who is prepared and able to do it, I think it would be you guys. So I think the model's necessary, and at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, they're not going to get they're not going to pass the test and get their license, and it'll kind of fall to the wayside, or and it's also a smaller niche of who this is going to be for. I'm a part owner of a beauty school. I'd be sitting here saying, well, this ain't going to take the place of schooling, but I think it's going to fill that niche. And quite frankly, I think it's going to fill the niche for people that either do fairly well or educated or can't really get due to the lack of, whether they're committed to jobs and they can't get out there and be free. I think it sends a different consumer to the industry. So, if there's further discussion, great. But if not, I'd make a motion for the board to seriously consider this, and my vote would say to push it through.
And I second Frank.
Go ahead.
We have a motion and a second. Do you have any other discussion or questions?
If I may.
Yeah.
Mr. Jimmy, go ahead.
I just don't really think that we got enough information to even take a vote today. The idea is great. I love the idea. But I just don't think, as a board, that we have enough information to make a decision today.
Well, on that note, I would like to say, I don't know how much more information they could give us. What we would feel more comfortable with is seeing how it actually works. So it'd be great if we could revisit, that we could
trial it.
Yeah, put it out on a trial basis, see how it works. I don't know how we actually do. What do we do? Bring in students that have done it to, hear their testimonials or whatever. But I think that's the only way. I don't know how much better they can present it, what they're going to do. Well, except for maybe the video that didn't work. But
she made up for that, though.
Yeah.
I was able to see it with words.
Yeah. So I just think we would feel really comfortable if we could see it work in action, if we could see it implemented and being successful. So, and I don't think we're going to know that until it is implemented. I don't know.
Like maybe say on a trial basis.
Yeah, if there's such a thing that we can do, if we can revisit it.
Let's have a comment here, if I may. And this is particular to your commentary. We put a lot of thought into, and we've seen and watched the others come before with an attempt at an online model that just kept missing pieces, and we took very close note to that. We didn't come in here today with a full-on throw this thing online and let us fly with it type of approach. What we thought would be appropriate would be a marriage, so that there's a medium to bridging into the online piece, which was why we called it the hybrid model. We're not changing any of the curriculum you all approved in 2016. Actually, the curriculum is the My Lady curriculum. It is their tools that they give the instructor schools that we every day have to implement to make sure students are passing.
I have one question. Has this been tried in any other state?
Oh, to your question.
We're going to be the first if we do this?
So my understanding and my questions to our contacts with My Lady and the MindTap component is there are other schools using the MindTap piece. We have schools in Memphis that use the MindTap piece. Perhaps they don't use it in the way we're suggesting, meaning that this is the core component for the curriculum for the theory piece, which is what we're suggesting. Part of our approval and what we asked in that document is because we took the time to think about oversight was that we want to have a very specific space for students to come, access the internet as necessary, and have access to the instructor if there is in fact a need to do so. So our Learning Center and Wi-Fi Center allows that student to sign up for one-on-one time with the instructor within a framework of designated hours. So that's a part of this approval in that notation. So we were very careful in making sure we address some of those concerns because this is, quite honestly, and I'm a licensed real estate broker, have been for 14 years. And Dearborn, a publisher similar to the My Lady, they developed their online course. They develop it, we use it, we allow our students to use it, but we don't create that content. We make sure that it's compliant and accredited with all those pieces, and of course the boards come in and approve it, but we use it every day. You have some that have a little more oversight and some that have a little less. However, it does come down to that particular learning style. This is not going to be a model that works for everybody, and we know that. So we're not doing away with access to a traditional apprenticeship approach, but I think what we've said today is, as we move this board forward, we want to see this is the middle ground. This is both the digital platform with access to instruction along with the hands-on experience. And then we're taking that extra effort to bring them back to make sure they're ready to test. So this isn't just a free-for-all approach, and this isn't taking away. We didn't develop the curriculum. This is the curriculum of your approved provider. And we're doing the same things that we would do with licensed instructors to oversee success for those students.
Earlier, you said that this has been used for 6 years. Was it used 6 years in the cosmetology field?
I do not know exactly how many years. I know that the MindTap platform, which is the digital learning platform, has been used with Cengage. Right now that they have the full cosmetology, the barbering program. The only one that is the disciplines that they do not offer in this is going to be the natural styling program as it stands right now. But according to our account rep, because that was one of our questions, is, hey, do you have schools who are using this as an online program? And what she said was, no, not necessarily as a standalone model, but we have tons of schools who subscribe to the MindTap platform. And so I could not give you to date how long, but again, this is my lady, so I would believe you guys have more access to asking those questions to the right people than I do as it relates to the MindTap component. But this is just their platform. This is just their book taken into a digital platform. And so, I don't know particular to that question that you're asking.
And like Pivot Point, it has the whole digital layout for you too, and you use it in your teaching too. So it's coming right from them. So that's exactly what you've done, is just using their book under your school.
This is their program. This is their digital platform. This is the My Lady digital platform. This is their curriculum that we're already using probably in all the schools if they're using a My Lady model. If they're preparing students for exams, they're using My Lady. And so this was scripted by them as a publisher.
So it's the same curriculum. We're comfortable with that. And even if a student, my theory is if a student is actually sitting in class in front of a teacher, they may or may not be successful when it comes to test time. The same as if they're taking an online course, they may or may not be. It's what they get at, how they apply themselves and what they get out of it. I guess we're just nervous that it's not going to equal the standard of being in a classroom, but it can be the same. It can be, you
but
can.
Our model, it can be. If a student feels so compelled to tie up the Wi-Fi center and the learning center with all the hours for the instructor for that day, they absolutely have the ability to sign up for those hands-on hours. So it doesn't remove, the oversight is there. We have to manage it. We have to manage the content, the grading, there are outside assignments and research that has to be done. They have to upload those things. It has to be graded. We critique it. We want the educators especially to be able to develop a learning curriculum on their own. So we're critiquing that so that they come before you without issues. So there is definitely oversight in the overall administration of the program. But relative to, again, I have tons of students who tell me, you know what, I just prefer to come into the classroom. I know it's going to be hard for me to figure it out, but I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like I'm going to be disciplined enough to do what I need to do on my own. And this wouldn't be the program for those particular students. But for those students who need that level of flexibility, I think we have to introduce it in a way that we can get more people who want that career.
I'd like to interject just a couple of things. We have one school right now that is similar in the aspect that it's a specialty school. It's only natural hair. They are offering the in-person, if that's your path that you like, and they're offering the online. We tested it. We saw it. The technology seemed great. Their passing scores are very good. And so the only thing they're not doing is the apprenticeship. So they're doing either physically or a combination of both, and we did approve them. And back to the schools in Tennessee using this, Ms. Jones is correct. I think the difference is they're using it similar to Ms. Russell. They're using it as an addition, as an aid to what they're teaching. None have gone full force, just this for the hours, if you will. But it doesn't sound like she's doing just the online piece as well. But our schools have been using the Pivot Point and the Milady online for a long time.
Are there any other questions? Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no.
No, because I just need more information.
No for me.
I'm going to say no, in that I'd like to see it tested as before. In all fairness, I feel like that it needs to be tested just as the other schools that have been represented. Not that it's always going to be no, I just want more information.
I'm going to say no because I don't quite have the information I think I need.
I believe the ayes have it.
I don't know quite. So we're close because we're missing 3 board members. So we may be split. If you don't mind, I'm going to do a roll call. And the roll call is yes if we are approving the hybrid model. And no is either we are not or we need more information and to possibly test, it sounds like. Okay. Ms. Kelly Barger?
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Boyd?
No.
Ms. Nina Toppinger?
Yes.
Mr. Frank Gambusa?
Yes.
Mr. Ron Gillihan?
No.
Ms. Brenda Graham?
Yes.
Ms. Wadette Granger?
Yes.
Ms. Judy McAllister?
Yes.
Ms. Patricia Richmond?
No.
Ms. Becky Russell?
No.
And our newest member, Ms. Ross? Yes. We have 7 yeses and 4 nos, and so the yes have it.
Yes, congratulations and good luck with your program.
Nice work.
Good luck.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. We will proceed, and we are now on a barber school application. Mr. Morris.
Good working board right here. Hey, you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, Sharon?
And you're welcome to sit down. You're welcome. Thank you. We are on page 17 on your iPads. If you give me a minute to make sure I'm on the same page. This is a new barber school. Appearing before you is Mr. Morris Wilder. This school is located in the Memphis area. It is 3,600 square feet. His application is before you. He has presented a business license, curriculum, the contingency plan, 15 tentative contracts, the floor plan and application have all been received in the office. The floor plan is on page 19, and I will let the board ask any questions that you would like.
Thank you for coming down this morning. Good to see you.
Thank you. No problem, man.
On your enrollment agreement, you say that your barber program, 1,500 hours, 38 weeks. that they're going to be there from 38 to 40 hours a week. Is that just left up to the student?
Yes, I have a full-time and part-time, so yeah, depending on what they sign up for.
Well, the part-time looks like it's 20 to 25 hours, so are you going to have them specify a particular hour? I'm going to be here 40 hours, or I'm going to be here 38 hours?
Yes, sir. The initial application, they will indicate the schedule that they want to go to school, and we'll do that accordingly.
Okay.
They can be 31 minutes. They're not considered late until they're 31 minutes late?
No, in fact, no, that's not correct. Hold on one second. I believe it's like if I start my class at 9:01, if they're late, if I start my class at 9 o'clock, they're considered late at 9:01.
Well, it says classes start at 8:30.
8:30, yes, ma'am.
And then they're considered late at 9:01.
9:01, yes.
31 minutes they have.
Well, the actual class started at 9. I like for them to be there at 8:30. Yes.
That's not going to happen.
If it does, we all won't be there.
You're pushing at 8:50, no? At 8:30.
Yeah.
You're already accredited?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay. 'Cause I was
This
just
is
seeing
a
it
brand new.
said-
It's a brand new school. So my understanding is going to be 3 years. 3 years on my own before I can get accredited. Yes.
Can you tell me where to find your refund policy?
Sir?
Your refund policy?
Yes, the refund policy. Yes. If you can look.
Okay.
Yeah.
On to page 29, I was asking because it says your loan funds, so you do not incur debt.
Right. Not yet. And it's all in the enrollment agreement, as you can see. In there, you can also see the percentages over time. For example, if they if they attend 30 days, they attend whether it's 30 days, 6 months. There are percentages where they can get a refund. Yes.
Page 31, it tells the retained amount by percentage.
Or where that you've got like student financial assistance, since you're not eligible yet, I would probably remove that, any of that, because when you go forward.
Yes.
And after you're approved, then you can put that in there. But right now, you're not approved for it, so
Okay.
I would totally delete anything with financial, government, and anything on it.
Okay. Yes. Yes. That was
That would be
intention.
my suggestion.
Yes, ma'am. That's a good suggestion. I appreciate it. I guess I was looking as if I was accredited, because that is the goal. Yeah. So I will take that out until that time becomes.
In your Barber instructor curriculum, you still listed as 450 hours. I believe that's no longer correct.
400 now?
300.
300, okay. I'll make a note of that, to change that.
Being patient, we like to go through these things.
No problem, no problem.
Trying to give you some things that might help you on your suggestions here. School located at?
Memphis, Tennessee,
Memphis.
1642 Shelby Drive. And the cross street is Mill Branch.
You know, I would just kind of take the notes that we've gave you and make sure you have the student's initial or sign off on every page of your documents when you sign somebody.
For motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. With no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Is the board wanting a board member to go as well as the field inspector?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are you ready?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I want to thank everybody and
Good luck.
good meeting you.
Good luck to you.
Hope to see you again.
Thank you. Okay, next is our final school application. This is on your iPads. We're on page 43, Jenny Lee Academy of Cosmetology Incorporated. This is a new barber school application. Miss Virginia Lewis is here. If you'll give me a minute.
Good evening.
Hey, how are you?
Hello.
Good morning.
Welcome.
You have the application. This school is located in Johnson City. It has been opened as a cosmetology school since 2006. You have before you the business license, curriculum, contingency plan. The 15 tentative students have been received, floor plan, application, and fee. And I will let you ask any questions that you see need clarification.
Still have both buildings?
I just have one building right now that school is in. I still have both buildings, but the other one
What is going to be the name of the school?
What is the?
What is going to be the name of the school as you
It's
finish?
still going to be Jenny Lee Academy of Cosmetology Incorporated.
It also needs to be identified as a barber school in some way, does it not?
If you're going to have the barber pole in any way, shape, or form, then yes, you would have to include that somewhere, but not necessarily have to say that it is a barber school.
Okay.
I think most people take this opportunity to add that in so it stands out. If you're marketing to barber students, they may not even think that it's a barber school.
Okay, I would just have to talk to NACAS about
The name change, yeah, that's not an issue.
Yeah,
I think
that's
most of our schools
something
have gone
else,
through
yeah.
that. Yeah.
I have these applications.
I'll take them
tentative.
further.
Excuse me, you want?
What is the space, the size of your school?
School is about 15,000 square feet.
For clarification, because I didn't catch this, is it a cosmetology school? Now she's going to add the barber?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
You have to do some remodeling to your space?
Really? No. We have enough big classrooms and we have enough stations that are separate. There's about 90 stations, and they're categorized into 20 at a time. So we're just going to pick one of the big classrooms.
I've been there to do your inspection a couple of times, and you have a large building, and it's the way it's set up. It's really nice.
Under your additional instruction training, you mentioned externships. What are you considering your externships?
Where did I mention that?
In your curriculum, just under anatomy and physiology, the next item is additional instruction and training. You say it's incorporated throughout the program. Externships for those who qualify, in parentheses. Spend a day. I don't know what that is.
Unless are you talking about just field trip? Probably.
I don't know. It's on page 51 on our iPads, I believe. On your documents, it's page 21.
I didn't bring.
So. Just above where you see the Barber grading policy, additional instruction and training. Got an apprenticeship program, or is that something else?
That's just an added course. I mean, an added chapter about sure
Like go on
exact-
field trips or something for the day, or while they're in school.
It's
to kinda
field
see.
trips and just special people coming in and talking about
Okay.
It's not apprenticeship, though, is what he's getting at, right?
right.
Okay. Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this application. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank
Good
you.
luck with your barber program.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And we'll send an inspector for that.
Do you want an inspector?
Send a board member with that.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Okay, we are on to our applications to test. On your iPads on page 54, our first applicant is Ms. Yvonne Beckheat. If you give me a second, come on up. Be read. Okay, thank you. Welcome to your have before you, this is a request Ms. Beckheat asked to be presented to the board. It's a request to waive the Tennessee exams. Ms. Beckheat submitted an application to test in August of 2017 with her documents from her school in Egypt. At the time and currently to this day, international hours are reviewed and applicants are generally submitted to test. Subsequently, Ms. Beckheat applied for a license by Reciprocity from Michigan. Her initial license date with the state of Michigan is May 24th, 2018, with both exams. She does not have the 5 years work experience. Obviously, the license was just obtained a few months ago, and therefore the board, again, has always required those applicants to take the 2 exams. She's appearing in person. She has submitted her request for you, and that's the first thing you see on page 54. She provided the exams that she's taken in Michigan. She has also provided proof of her work as far as pictures of clients that she's worked on. And then, as I mentioned, she had applied in 2017, and at that point she completed the correct paperwork. It was the application to test. And then her education from Egypt is on page 62. I'll let you ask any questions that you see.
Do we have any recommendation?
I'm sorry.
Do we have any recommendation?
Well, with international applicants, our recommendation and what the board has always done is ask them to test in Tennessee if they've not had 5 years of work in the United States. She has work in her country, but the board's been pretty consistent with international applicants, asking them to test when the documents are vetted.
But she did take both tests in Michigan.
Right.
Are they PSI?
They are, but they're 3 months ago. PSI tests in Michigan as well.
What would the handling be from somebody who came from Michigan with 3 months licensing without international?
We have them, without international hours, it's Reciprocity. They have the same number of hours we do. They have the same, not the same exams. You all know that the exams are different in every single state.
Right, but I'm saying if we ignored the
International?
the previous what happened in Michigan, she would get Reciprocity?
If she studied in Michigan and got licensed in Michigan, she would get Reciprocity.
She just tested in Michigan.
She just tested in Michigan, that's correct. So her
Gotcha.
educational documents, again, and the board's decision for those have been to protect the public, just to know that in the United States, the hygiene, the communicable diseases, the sanitation issues, the things that the schools cover are
What
there.
is our experience or knowledge of Michigan expecting that for their applicants and tests as well? Do we know?
I don't know that I know that I'm understanding your question.
Do we have any previous experience with Michigan applicants not having to know that and be able to get licensed? The information that we're talking about, what we'd want to see.
We have had a lot of applicants from Michigan come through with the exact scenario, and they have all been asked to test in Tennessee.
Okay, so that's been the precedent.
100%.
Okay.
And I will say Michigan is a little bit different in how they grant their initial licenses. Michigan accepts experience in lieu of education, and they allow that to count towards the hourly requirement. And so here, what we have on file for this particular applicant is a certificate showing that she completed work in a shop for approximately 2 years for more than 2,500 hours. And so it appears that that's what has happened as far as Michigan granting the license, as opposed to training at an actual educational facility.
We do the same across the board we've been doing.
So do I. I think
we need to
precedent's been
keep it the
set. and-
same.
Is that a
Motion to
motion?
to have her test.
I would second that.
We have a motion and a second to require the test. So I guess that would be to deny this appeal.
Just because that's what we've been doing across the board, and we're trying to keep it fair.
Is there any other question or discussion?
We want to.
Yes, ma'am, I'll hear from you.
Can I take 5 minutes to make a situation? I discuss
5
my
minutes.
I am hairstyle before 22 years ago in my country. I teach this, my uncle teach me everything. When I go to college, I am accounting, okay? But I like to everything a hairstyle. After that, I go to school and I study hard. After I study over 2,500 hours, I coming here USA to Michigan, and I make it a practice 2 times. 1 time in 2016, and I successed 80%. But after that, I pregnant, and my doctor told me I can't move it, I can't make it anything, and my practice is expired. After that, before many months, I make it a practice again and success again. After that, I make it a series, and finally, I am hairstyle, and I am brown for that. After all of this, I coming to my husband here to live with him, and I wanted to change my address, and I don't know what's going on. That's it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to deny the appeal and to require both tests in Tennessee. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The motion carries. Okay. The board has denied your appeal, and they're going to require you to take both tests. Okay, good luck to you.
You can do it. You can do it. It won't take you long to get in and get it done.
From when you came. We've already got you set up.
Luck.
Okay, now we have our felony applicants. These are applications for examination on your iPads. May not be the next one. For Ms. Linda Bowling, Mr. Kenneth Daniel, Latarius Howard, Larry Johnson, and Cedric Taylor. These applicants have felonies within the last 3 years or are currently incarcerated. The request to take the Tennessee examination is submitted for the board. These requests are normally approved with an agreed signed order for 2 years probationary period. And if you give me a minute, I will give you the page we're on. Page 71, if you can skip to it. The other applicant is moved to the miscellaneous section, so we'll come back to her in a minute.
Make a motion that we accept these applicants with a signed agreed order and 2-year probationary period.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve these applications with a signed agreed order and 2 years probation. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries.
Before we leave our felony applicants, we have one unique situation. Mr. Kenneth Daniel, he has actually gone past the 7-year timeline to complete his education while he was incarcerated in 2014. So we would actually need the approval of the board to be able to extend and approve that for him. And as soon as his starts on page 76. If you look at the withdrawal document from the school, they broke that down for us. He enrolled for the first time January 5th, 2009 and obtained hours, and then again in June of 2014. So those total hours were 953 hours. He was then incarcerated and has completed within the facility 547 hours. So I would separately need the board, due to these unique situations, approving him going past the 7 years so that he can now test, and then after he signs the agreed order for the 2 years probationary period, would be able to get a license.
Make a motion for him to have the special circumstances to test.
Second.
With the agreed order.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Board okay to continue, or would you like a break?
About a 5-minute break.
5 minutes is good.
5 minutes? Okay. We'll be back right at noon. Thank you. Just pause this, Betty.
How you doing, Miss Kelly?
Good. Yes, been a while.
I won't go through it. Okay.
Good luck. Yes, I've done that, but not.
Thank you. We are back on the record. And if I could, I'm going to have us skip a little bit. If you would open your iPads to page 92, we would normally approve the reciprocal, but I think we wanted to talk over some things, and we've got right now a master barber instructor that's been waiting patiently, so I thought we could skip and get to his application. I'll give everybody a minute to get to that, and then I will walk us through it. Okay, so on your iPads, we have a request for consideration of continuing education for our master barber instructor, Mr. Charles Robinson. If you give me a minute, did you want to come up? To have that on ready. Okay. On your iPads, you have information regarding Mr. Robinson, wanting his instructor license back. He has attended the UT Knoxville Conference Center session every year. Mr. Robinson actually teaches at that session. In 2016 and 2017, the roster did not consistently show that he actually attended the full 2 days. It was not clear if after he taught he was also attending. Therefore, his license, when he renewed in 2016, took off the instructor piece. So we renewed his license without the barber instructor piece because his license number wasn't on it. It was one of those technicalities. And again, because he taught, there's no way to complete 16 hours if you're also teaching, because there's only 16 hours. Right. But because he is attending every single year, he therefore does actually have the 16 hours. So I have before you, I think, everything you'll need to see, the certificates that he obtained. On page 100, you can kind of see why my team would have missed it. His name's there and he's signed to the right, but there is no license number. I go and speak at these things. I'm signed in the same way. I don't have a license number, and so the instructors are all logged in. We will be cautious of this next time, but there's no way we can catch that. There's over 150 people attending sometimes. If their number's not on it, we're going to miss it. So he is requesting to have his instructor piece back because he has been consistently attending.
I took his class. He was awesome in it. He's really good. He'll talk. He can talk good. But, well, it was very good. Very good.
For him that he stays the entire weekend,
Yes.
the entire time. He's
Yeah.
always there attending other classes, so he's there.
Actually, you can't get rid of the guy.
You didn't know you were waiting on this, did you?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a motion to reinstate it. I'd vouch for the guy. He's straight up. He's good for the
Second.
industry.
I know.
So we have a motion and a second to correct this error, and we apologize for anything that we might have missed, and we'll keep our eyes on it.
Thank you,
Do
board.
we have I guess we need to vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Nobody's opposed, so we'll say congratulations. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
See you, man.
Okay, so now we're going to come back on track. I'm going to turn it over in a minute to Ms. Hooper. If you will, tap your iPad so that your library comes up. We are going to review a separate document on your library. You see the legal report that we've done with the committee, Reciprocity we've done, the full presentations, which you've been in. You want to click on a request for Lee Pham presentation. It's a substantially large document, so I saved it separately only for that reason.
What page are on? I'm sorry.
It's a separate chunk. Make sure to go back to your
Oh,
library.
it's in the library, gotcha.
Yeah. It was several pages long, and so I just didn't want to confuse anyone, and it was easier to separate it. So this is a request for reconsideration to reinstate a cosmetology license for Mr. Lee Pham. The board is presented the application. The board office was presented this on June 18th, as well as he submitted his 2 passing scores back in 2010 when he obtained his cosmetology instructor license. And so I will let Ms. Sherelle Hooper fill you in. This particular license was revoked in January of 2015, so it's all yours.
Hi. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this application because there is some history that the board would need to be aware of in order to make an informed decision on this matter. Mr. Pham, he did reapply for licensure. He submitted a new application as a cosmetologist, and this was submitted on June 11th of 2018. Mr. Pham was previously licensed by the board as a cosmetology instructor. He has a detailed history with the board involving disciplinary action and subsequent litigation, which I'm going to explain in greater detail. There was a contested case hearing in May 2014 before an administrative law judge determined that Mr. Pham sold 10 invalid cosmetology licenses to people he knew did not qualify for licensure according to the law. These licenses were sold to people for amounts ranging from $2,000 to $6,500 each. In exchange for these funds, Mr. Pham helped people obtain licenses by reciprocity. All 10 of these licenses were later surrendered or revoked. The ALJ entered an order revoking Mr. Pham's license, assessing $20,000 in civil penalties and ordering costs, which were approximately $6,739.75. To date, Mr. Pham has made approximately 2 payments amounting to a total of $450. Now, after this hearing, Mr. Pham appealed to the Chancery Court, which did not find in his favor. He subsequently appealed to the Tennessee Court of Appeals and was unsuccessful. He requested permission to appeal to the Tennessee Supreme Court, but was denied. I think it's important to read a passage from the Tennessee Court of Appeals order to help you understand the case a little bit better, if you could bear with me. And this passage is from page 22 of the Tennessee Court of Appeals order, which is on your iPads. Page 28 of 102 on the document, if you want to follow along. It says, the trial court made the following statements regarding its evaluation of this case under the substantial and material evidence standard. and this is from the trial court. This is not a close case. This record is replete with substantial and material evidence that supports the ALJ's ruling that Mr. Pham sold licenses to several people who were not eligible to receive licenses by reciprocity. This conduct of selling licenses would have been unlawful, although less egregious, even if the putative licensees had been legally eligible to seek licenses through the reciprocity process. Mr. Pham did not inform the proposed licensees that they were required to meet applicable licensing requirements, such as educational requirements or the requirement of holding an equivalent license from another state. The ALJ committed no error in discrediting or disregarding Mr. Pham's selective, bare denials, or in not believing Mr. Pham's testimony that he was trying to help the victims. In the limited instances where Mr. Pham admitted to receiving money, his claim, for instance, that the money was for tuition at one or more out-of-state cosmetology schools was simply not worthy of credence, given that there is no proof that he had the authority to collect tuition for any school of cosmetology. If Mr. Pham was acting merely as a helpful conduit for conveying tuition to schools, then he might have been willing to refund the money to people who asked for refunds. There's no proof that Mr. Pham ever passed any money along to the schools, and no proof that any of the proposed licensees actually attended these schools during the relevant time period. It is also undisputed in the record that Mr. Pham never refunded any money to the people who paid him money in the course of the transactions in question. And then the Court of Appeals states, we agree with the trial court's analysis and find no reversible errors in the ALJ's findings with respect to the witnesses who testified that they paid Mr. Pham in exchange for a reciprocity license. So I wanted to provide you with that background information and essentially the essence of the holding in the Court of Appeals case. It is certainly within your discretion whether or not to permit Mr. Pham to re-enter the profession. His disciplinary history, including the legal proceedings following, will help you make an informed decision regarding this application. Legal does not have a recommendation. However, the board would have discretion to either approve the application or deny the application pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated 62-5-317 under Section 2, which is unprofessional, immoral, or dishonorable conduct, under Section 9, which is a violation of this chapter or of any rules duly promulgated under this chapter, or under Section 10, which is failure to comply with the lawful order of the board. And if there are any questions, feel free to ask me at this time.
So he had a $20,000 fine. He made two payments of $450 total. Was that $450 for the total?
Yes, the civil penalties were $20,000. The costs that were ordered amounted to $6,739.75, and at this time we're showing two payments amounting to a total of $450.
I'd like to make a motion to deny based on all the codes and sections that Sherelle mentioned.
We have a motion and a second to deny this application. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries.
Thank you. Since Ms. Spicer is here, if it is okay for the complaint committee to go ahead and take care of that piece, I will turn it back over to her so she can review everything that was discussed. If anyone else has questions, and we can put that on the record. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. We met in the complaint committee this morning. I'll take you through what happened during that meeting, and then if anybody has any questions about the report, we can take it up. On number 62, which is on page 21 of the report, 62 and 63, I was asked to double check to make sure that was the shop and the owner, and in fact it is. So you see the recommendation to close. And the only other issue that was brought forth was number 78. And the only change there was that we are going to reinspect, given there was an issue with who was the manager on the date. Director was there. Of course, we can't go back in time, so we're going to close this complaint and then send an inspector out to reinspect to determine and make sure who the actual. And there were no other changes to the legal report, and it was adopted by the committee.
We have a motion to accept the legal report.
Make a motion to accept.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the legal report. All in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you all.
If along those lines we can go back to the Reciprocity Committee meeting, I'll turn it over to Ms. Coppinger, and we had a total of 15 applicants.
Right. We had 15 applicants. We granted 6 of those applicants reciprocity. 1, we voted to require the practical exam. 6, we denied reciprocity. The 6 that we denied, 2 of those were from Georgia, and they presented fraudulent documents. Obviously, fraudulent documents. Okay. And the other 4 were from California, where there are 18 schools in question in California right now. So a letter is going to be sent to these applicants to inform them that we're waiting results of this investigation of these schools. There's, like I said, 18 schools in California and 1 school in Georgia in question. And then we did require 2 of the applicants to submit a 5-year work history. And I think they were both from Georgia. But we also have an issue. We were trying to decide if we could come down with a timeline to waive the practical exam based on their experience. And if you can explain that better, then we could give Roxana more leadway to approve some of these if we can come up with what we feel like is enough experience in the field so they don't have to take the practical.
I think that kind of covers it. We've not ever been able to pinpoint, is 10 years enough? I think the thought has been no. So we're presenting most of those individuals with 15 years or more. But if the board is up to discussing, what is that magical time frame where an individual can prove that they've been working in the industry to the best that they can, and that the practical is missing because several states don't do a practical exam. We're asking them to take it now. Without a doubt, anyone that comes to us and has been working since the early 90s, 80s, we don't even send the letter that says you need the practical. We have the conversation and bring them before the board. But if the board can decide what that time frame is, one of the things we're going to look at here is a possibility of fewer board meetings. And so with that in line, we'd be delaying applicants longer. So that's what I wanted us to discuss, and then hopefully give me the authority to pick that date. If they've got a license that is proof that they've been working that long, then the board office can approve them.
Is there a magic number?
Well, I immediately thought of, we're granting people with 10 years experience the opportunity to have apprentice, so, I don't know how that 10-year precedent came up before, but.
That's a good point. That is the statute for them to take on students. You are correct.
That's a great point.
Number I had in mind as well because of the same reason.
Yeah. That would cover a lot of our applicants, a lot that now are getting the letter and going to take the PSI exam. Because the last time we talked about it, we were closer to 15 to waiving those, but the board still wanted to see them. So if
now this is them not just having the license, but having worked.
Well,
having work experience.
And so we require tax forms, proof of business license, anything along those lines would have to be required to waive it. Yes.
What about the foreign applicants?
That, I think, is a completely different issue, if you will. What the board has done, and this meeting, we had no international applicants. That was just one of those coincidences, I think. What the board has historically done with international applicants is review the documents, and in some cases, if you remember, we've had concern with the documents. They do have to be in English so we can understand them. But if we have concern or a reason to be concerned about the school, we have submitted them to be evaluated, and there's various companies that can do that. But once the documents are here, we present all of them to the board for testing, and the agreement or the path has been we approve them to test. If they have a license in another state or U.S. territory, the board up till now has said they need that license for at least 5 years or pretty close to 5 years, because that proves to us that they've been able to put everything that they learned somewhere else, but they've got enough experience with what's expected in shops and following the statute and so forth.
10 years.
Is 10 years our number?
Motion?
So we'll make that, somebody make that as a motion to...
Sorry, I'll make the motion to allow Roxana to give reciprocity to individuals with all the correct education and 10 years experience.
Second.
Motion and a second to authorize Roxana. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I have it as proof of education, obviously, an active license, because all that falls in reciprocity, but also proof of work experience, correct, for 10 years. My team will be very happy, without a doubt.
Who will?
My team that has to send the letters and
Gotcha.
take the call and the emails. And
They can send chocolate and
No.
stuff our way.
Okay, so we will get back on track, and we are now back on the main presentation.
Do we need to approve the reciprocity report as a whole?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We do need a motion to approve the full thing. Thank you. I got you sidetracked.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the reciprocity report. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And we are back on the full presentation, and we are going to go to page 61, if you could. This applicant was right before our felony, and I moved her at some point, but I think the version we saved is not the same one, so I'll make sure that everybody...
To page 61?
61, it is Miss...
No, that was our appeal.
Right after. Page 65. Schultz, yes. Ms. Schultz is requesting the board's approval for a cosmetology license. She applied to take the Tennessee exam in November 2017 because her Florida license she had held since 1980 had expired in the year 2000. So rather than renewing and coming in through reciprocity, she applied to test. At that time, she submitted all her high school education showing that she completed the cosmetology program, and the board submitted her to take both exams. So you will see that she passed her exams in Tennessee. June 25th is when she passed the practical, and June 14th she passed the theory. The office at that time did not realize that the high school curriculum would have been only the 1200. She tested in both, and so I'm requesting that the board approve her. She came through 2 days, I believe, after the board meeting, so the thought of having her wait without working, she had the work experience. Had we presented all that, she would have been approved. So we're asking that we approve her license at this point.
I'll make the motion to approve her license.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this license. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And then we're going to for felony applicants all the way to application for Ms. Frances Fuqua. Get you a page number. On page 106. This is an extension for continuing education requirements for a cosmetology instructor, Ms. Frances Fuqua, persistent to Tennessee Code annotated 62-4-114. An instructor must complete 16 hours of an approved training program. It is at the board's discretion to approve up to 1 additional year extension for good cause. She has provided, and this particular document is actually directly from the doctor, explaining that she will be unable to attend for a year.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this extension. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have a request for an extension for the time frame to complete school. This is from Ms. Tashina Johnson, pursuant to Tennessee Code annotated 62-4-123. A student has 7 years from the original date of enrollment to complete the required courses. Ms. Johnson is currently enrolled in a school but needs additional time after the September 2015 deadline where she would have needed to finish, and she doesn't think she'll be able to finish all of it. She's provided a letter on page 113 explaining her situation.
Started school in 2017. She's not that far out of graduation. Did I miss something? Is there?
She started school way before then, I believe, in 2009.
Oh, she's speaking of that one particular school.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm with you.
Exactly.
Okay. There you go.
And I think when they put her in the program, they just didn't realize how many of the hours went by that, and then they told her to please contact us that had to be looked at. $474 hours that they accepted transferring in.
She's going for cosmetology?
Yes, she is.
She still has a lot more.
So they transferred in the 474.17, and then, so she's got 874 total, I believe, is what this transcript says. So she's still missing about half. This is as of September. So she would have needed to finish this September. These hours are as of July, and I think her fear is that she's going to be short 200-300 hours to finish.
Yeah, can we give her a timeline to when she has? We can extend it.
Yes.
She has to finish by
the end of the calendar year.
Into the calendar year.
So that would be 3 extra months.
Oh yeah. I make a motion to extend it till the end of the year.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to grant this request and extend to the end of the calendar year. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Next, we have a request for reinstatement of a master barber license number 16747 for Courtney Deshawn Bolden. This license was revoked for failure to be in compliance with the agreement set forth by consent order. Ms. Courtney Bolden's license was revoked on February 22nd, 2017 for failure to make all her payments timely. Since then, she has made the payments that were pending and would like her license reinstated. This, too, came in not that long ago. The final payment is on your iPads. And although we don't have an official letter from her, that final payment was dated July 18th, but I believe we received it August 1st or 2nd. Normally, I would have them appear before the board. Again, this complaint wasn't anything of major concern. It wasn't a huge amount. She needed a payment plan and did not stick with it.
She is current now.
She is current with, yes, with the case and what was owed to it.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, we like to have some type of explanation and request to the board, but it didn't come in. The thought of waiting on it till October, again, was one of those situations why we're presenting it without anything official from them.
What was she, what was the civil penalty? For?
$250.
I mean, what was it for?
Hold on.
It looks like it was for allowing somebody unlicensed to work. Allowing someone unlicensed to work in the shop.
I'm sorry.
My
Just
red light.
I was just thinking about it.
Page 122 is the findings of fact on the consent order. The civil penalty was not a huge amount, but, a large amount to one person is different to another, so she was on a payment plan.
How late was she on the payment?
Oh, this case goes back. Her payments were due. First payment was $80, December 1st, 2016, then January 2nd, 2017, and February 2017. She missed 2 of the 3 payments. And I do have to add to that legal counsel, when those payment plans are missed, they call, they send letters. I mean, they're not prompt to revoke, because that's obviously not the goal here. But the consent order, if they agree to a payment plan, is pretty set straight.
Have you ever had this happen before?
We have. Yes.
Oh, but may I add, not that this makes anything right, but it says that this respondent was the manager of the shop, allowing an unlicensed individual, but that could be that the individual's license was expired, correct?
Yes.
So it may not be as deliberate as it has been in past times.
And the revocation, exactly, the case, right, and the revocation isn't about those infractions, it's because they didn't stay in compliance with the
Right,
payment plan.
right.
They're agreeing to that when they sign the consent order.
And if she's current, I would make the motion to reinstate her license.
We have a motion to reinstate. Do we have a second? We have a second, Ms. Ross. Discussion? Go ahead.
Still a balance, though, right?
Paid it off.
She's totally
February
paid
18th, she paid the last one, yes.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
They don't make money.
Opposed, say no.
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you. And we are on to the director's report on your iPads, if you will, on page 131. This is the financial information through May of 2018. It reflects an estimated surplus of $242,350 for fiscal year 2018, and we have only one more month to go. So hopefully we
Screw
will
it up,
end
guys.
close to that. Yeah. So that's more information than anything else. The next piece on your, are there any questions about our, no? Okay. The next piece is the 2019 proposed dates, and if you bear with me, the dates, I'll be happy to send them to everyone once we get these in motion, but at this point, we are proposing looking at doing 6 board meetings instead of the current 9. Currently, we skip February, but that's kind of because of the Super Bowl decision, but that's the month we skip. And then we also skip due to the summer and people being on vacation and schools closed and all that fun stuff. We skip July and September. But the 9 meetings have still been probably more than any other board does. And as conversations have been had, not only by the assistant commissioner, but even the governor's office, a lot of individuals that are sought to be on the board struggle with this, the demand that it takes to be at all these meetings, and I know you all can understand. So a concern we've had in the past is not getting board business done, because as you can see, even when we skip July, we have a longer meeting and we have a reciprocity, but this board has done amazing kind of looking at the straight reasons of what can be approved and what can't, and we follow those guidelines. The board sends letters to anyone that doesn't substantially meet so that they don't have to wait to be presented, and then they know what they can do to move forward. So along those lines, we've streamlined now even the practical exam. We've got some guidance on these things. If the board is comfortable with the 6 meetings, we will need a motion. We would go down to meeting every other month. So we have the end of January, which would fall in line with the Super Bowl. We have April, June, August, October, and then December 2nd, which is a little bit hectic because of Thanksgiving. We could always move that December 2nd and make it the second Monday in December. I would propose that we looked at that date and try to do it that way, just to make sure that we don't run back to back with people on vacation for Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving is, I'm looking at this year. Never.
Is it the third week?
I don't know when it is next year. But like if it were this year, that wouldn't make it any difference because it's the 22nd of November this year.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see.
I think this sounds great to me.
Agree.
And there's always a caveat, too, that if we ever need an emergency kind of meeting, we know how we can do those online or do them on telephones and things like that. So,
I make a motion to approve to go into 6 meetings a year.
Second.
Everybody.
I think everybody seconded.
Who was the second? Judy.
I think everybody seconded.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this 6 meeting schedule. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And the February date, I will send this out. The board is approving it as is for February the 2nd, but I will send it out if the board's okay with this motion, counting for December the 9th instead of December 2nd. Thanksgiving is November the 28th, and so that would put you all right back to, and I wouldn't want to do that to anybody because it's a full meeting, and that way you can get away and do everything. So we'll have the motion count. We will look at changing December the 2nd for the 9th, and if anything needed to change, even the 16th could be a possibility for December, if that's okay. 9th or 16th.
The 9th now, December, you're saying, right?
The 9th is going to be our first option.
Okay.
Which is the
Next
first,
year, right.
it's that second Monday.
Second's out.
For this month.
I think
For
so.
2019,
okay.
It would be very difficult, I think, on you all to ask that you come back the Monday after Thanksgiving.
Well, as bad as the Super Bowl was, this is usually the SEC championship weekend. So.
Yeah. There you go. That's the main thing.
The 9th is?
Championship.
Or the
The second.
The 2nd. Okay, there you go.
And I doubt we're going to be in it, but
Yeah.
Could be.
So we'll go for the 9th, but if we don't have this room, because with our size we need this room, we'll go for the 16th, and I will email everyone those dates so you can set your calendars.
Remember, you have a new coach.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
oh yeah, we did his eyebrows last week
Yeah.
before SEC Media Week. He knew the camera was good. We did ears, eyes, nose. We took care of him. He's a really nice guy, man. He went up to every customer in that barbershop, shook their hand.
Oh, good.
I mean, he was a gentleman.
Good.
So as they win, he has to come in every week and have that done.
No, if he wins, you don't have to come in. If he loses, you got to come in every week and get a shave.
And where did he come from, Frank?
Sorry?
Where did he come from?
Somewhere south of here, I forget.
It was south of Tennessee.
Auburn, I
wasn't it?
think, wasn't it?
Roll Tide.
We're going to the Auburn, Tennessee game, I think.
Okay, you have next on your iPads. This is informational, but it's something we are very proud of. I'm very happy and excited, not only with our field inspectors, but their entire support team. The field inspections for every one of our shops were completed mid-July for the fiscal year 2017-2018. And you have the full inspection sheet report if you would like to see it. It kind of lists the numbers by counties. You can see that our busier folks inspect over 1,100 shops, and that's not counting those that we have follow-ups with complaints. That's just the annual or initial inspections, and they do a fantastic job. So I told them how proud I knew you all would be of them seeing this, and was happy to report that. Yeah, it is. The last piece that I have before turning it over again to Ms. Hooper is on continuing education. This is of all things, this particular meeting, we got to meet Ms. Jones. She had been approved, or has been approved, for continuing education for 2 different dates. The first date that they had was for May, and they canceled it because there wasn't a big enough turnout. That one did give us some problems in the office because, early before the summer, we have a lot of instructors that have been waiting on those first sessions, and so it was canceled. And this email confirms that the second session was canceled as well. So just an informational piece. I think it's hard on the smaller sessions to commit to these dates. It's rough, though, I think, on the instructors, obviously. We'll ignore the office staff. On the instructors, it is hard when we've got to tell them, now that's not offered, you have to go a month. And in some cases, this hasn't happened yet, but if they've already done their one-time request, they'd actually have to test again. So it's a tough situation.
These cases are going to end up costing somebody a license or
the May, we had one or two
whatever.
Instructors in May. They were able to go to the Memphis one in June because they expired in June. They had planned to go. And I think in her case, it has been just low turnout, but there's no way to know. Our smaller sessions have everywhere from 10 students to 20. Their evaluations are wonderful. Most of those students that go to the smaller sessions really do enjoy the closer one-on-one. But just a piece. And so far, I welcome Mr. Gambusa went to the UT Knoxville if he wants to give us any insight. And I know that Mr. Boyd went to the one in June in Memphis. And so the evaluations have turned out really good.
Yeah, Knoxville is extremely well organized. So you guys up there, and saw Becca from across the room, but she ran the other way after I went to go give her a hug. No, but I thought there were some really good teachers and extremely well organized, and it had a great vibe. You could feel people weren't just dreading. Sometimes you could feel it in the room, like, I got to do this. It seemed happy, which is rare. Yeah, good job.
And we were very lucky. This is going to happen in the TSU session as well. A representative from the FBI came to that session and spoke about human trafficking, how it impacts our industry, what we're trying to do. Sherelle has run with this. She's made contact. She's attended several meetings. I mean, it's something we're very involved and committed to informing our field inspectors so that they get some training. We're going to send information to the shops so they have something they can photocopy and hand out and look at and train their people. But we want to start with the instructors in the schools because the students that get out into the industry need to know what to look out for.
It was very enlightening.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe the statistic where 33% of it was just local and American. I mean, that blew me away.
And that is all that I have, so I'm going to turn it over. And on your iPads, you've got our new business. That is all Sherelle with our rules that are in motion. Thank you.
All right, if you turn to page 137 on your iPads, I have the red line version of the notice of rulemaking hearing related to the equipment requirements for you. Also, for the record, I do want to state that there are copies of this red line in the back of the room on the table for anyone who's interested in a copy to follow along. The board worked on these rules pretty extensively, and the last time that you worked on them, I agreed to go back and make the changes and have these reviewed for presentation to you all for adoption. And so this is actually the final draft that would be adopted by you all before it would be circulated internally to others for potential issue spotting and revisions. Provided that you all do adopt these rules today and there are revisions, as long as they're not substantive, we would go ahead and move forward with your permission, of course, with setting a rulemaking hearing. However, if there are substantial revisions, these rules would be revised and brought back to you for consideration again. So if you could look over these rules carefully and let me know if you have any questions or comments, I would definitely appreciate that before we take a vote on adoption of these rules. And behind the rules at the very end is a draft of the regulatory flex addendum and the governor's questions. And those are questions that we would need to answer and submit answers to. Those are just drafts. So you wouldn't be adopting those today, but that's helpful information that you all need to review today in consideration of adopting these rules.
Terrell, on page 139, it's in the very first page of this, it talks about 2 manicure tables. That's really what it's always said. Maybe instead of tables, I know it's a small thing, but 2 manicure stations, because there's a lot of different ways that that might be delivered.
Letter D.
Letter D, where it says 2 manicure tables. Maybe it would be better with 2 manicure stations.
That would be to get their business license. In the barber shop area, I'm on page 141. It says enclosed storage area for clean towels and 1 covered container for soiled towels. When you move all the way back to the cosmetology shop, it says that these things must be labeled. So I think to keep it consistent, it should also be labeled in Barber. Page 141, and it's sections B and C, storage areas for clean towels and soiled towels. That should say labeled storage.
Okay, I see that change. We can add that language in.
On page 152, there's a requirement that a student receives their kit after 200 hours in a cosmetology school. Same thing is 100 hours on the barber side. So would we want to look at both or 100 for both? Split the difference and go at 150.
Why is it 100 at Barber's? Do they need it?
After 100 hours, we typically try to get implements in the hands of the students so they can begin that razor work, and clipper work that takes such a long time to develop, that hands-on skill. So,
Cosmetology-wise, would they ever need them at 100?
They start doing clients at 200 hours.
And they take clients in barbering.
yeah, we can take clients at 100 hours in barbering. So
That's why it's that way.
that's the real
That's the
difference,
difference.
right
You don't want to move that to 150 then.
there. No.
You're going to need your kit at 100. We can have a kit at 100.
Right, there's
but they
nothing
are
to
not,
prevent that.
Oh, no later than 200.
Right.
So
They don't have to have theirs to 200.
it's not really broken, but I just noticed
Right.
that there was a difference. But there is a reasonable difference in the two. So. Sherelle, on page 159, item 9 is referring to requirements for restrooms in cosmetology shops and schools, I believe. I'm not sure that same kind of language appears anywhere on the barber side. If it's not, we might want to insert that somewhere.
Okay, give me a second and I'll
Sure.
take a look at
Sure.
that.
Has anybody applied for the Barber residential license?
Yes, we licensed 2 individuals fairly quickly after it became law, and then the inspections, I think we've got 3 pending, so not huge numbers.
Inspections of their kits?
Yes, of their kits in person.
And then how does it stand on the cosmetology side?
They can go.
Okay.
Based on the law. And this is coming up as I'm speaking to instructors a lot, because obviously they've got to understand if they're teaching their students that the cosmetology students, by statute, can, under the exemption, go to provide services in people's home. But your master barber students would have to pay the extra $50 to be inspected and $25 for a card to have, and have us inspect them. So.
Yeah, there's no inspection on any supplies or the place or anything for cosmetologists, right?
It falls under the exemption. Correct. There is none.
And okay. And they could just, okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, Ron, I did not see that language duplicated on the barber side, so you're saying you would like to see that same language as it relates to the restroom requirements on the barber side, correct?
Wherever it needs to go appropriately in there.
Okay, we can do that.
If we don't, inevitably somebody will come up and say, well, I can't get my shot because of this, so.
Is there anything in here about that residential barber license in this?
Not in the equipment, no. It's a separate
statute. Okay.
Doing okay? Do we need a little more time? Terrell, do you need a motion for this, or?
So what we would need is a motion to adopt these as drafted, and then for you all to give me the authority to make these 3 minor changes subsequent thereto before the rulemaking hearing, and that would be to ensure that manicure tables is changed to manicure stations throughout, to add the word labeled on page 5 for sections B and C, and then to mirror the restroom language on the Barber side that's on page 23 of the rules under section 9. And so we would need a motion to adopt these rules by roll call vote, and then authority given to me to change these 3 things thereafter, just because they're very minor.
Make a motion to adopt the changes with roll call vote.
I think she's moving to mirror what you just said.
Yeah.
So I would need a motion to adopt the rules, and then following that motion, for you all to give me approval by a motion to make these 3 minor changes.
So we've got the motion to adopt. We'll do a second. Ms. Nina. We'll ask roll call vote.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the table with Ms. Patricia motioning and Ms. Nina doing the second, and this is to adopt the rules. We have Ms. Kelly Barger.
Yes.
Mr. Jimmy Boyd.
Yes.
Ms. Nina Coppinger.
Yes.
Mr. Frank Ambusa.
Yes.
Mr. Ron Gillihan.
Yes.
Ms. Brenda Graham.
Yes.
Ms. Judy McAllister.
Yes.
Ms. Patricia Richmond.
Yes.
Ms. Becky Russell.
Yes.
And Ms. Jenny Ross.
Yes.
And Ms. Granger, you're not here, are you? Okay, I didn't think so. Just wanted to check and not leave her out. All approved.
We would, motion carries. Thank you. We need a motion to authorize Ms. Sherrill to make those minor changes that we've discussed, those 3 items.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
And we have a second with Patty. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The last thing I would need is permission to set a rulemaking hearing. We do need to provide a 52-day notice, and so I would ask for authority to set the rulemaking hearing as soon as practicable. So if you all could also take a vote on that, that would be great. Thanks.
I would make that motion also.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to set a rulemaking hearing. Do we need a date on that, Sherrill?
No, I would like broad authority to set it as soon as practicable on a day of your regularly scheduled board meeting.
So the motion is to set a rulemaking hearing and have the board staff set that date. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion carries.
Thank you.
All we have?
Roxana,
Yes.
before we leave, two real quick things.
Absolutely.
Got an email this week from probably John Lillard regarding our annual training for. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Human resources?
Human
kind of
resources.
training?
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
If you haven't done that yet, make sure you check online and take care of those things. I think the deadline is this week.
I think so. I think it's Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Sometime soon, the 15th, whatever.
August 15th, whenever that is.
So Wednesday, next Wednesday. Thank you.
And also, before we leave, you know, this morning with our scenario with these online schools, we're getting more and more of these things. And to me, it seems like we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants a little bit. I know we all have ideas of what we're looking for and what we want. Would it be inappropriate to start looking at maybe having a short, small committee to come up with some ideas or recommendations of what it is that we're really trying to look at in these type programs, or what we might look in the future to requiring to get ahead of that instead of kind of playing catch up?
We're referring to the schools in
Yes.
particular,
Yeah.
for schools?
These school online programs and things that are coming up.
I'll leave that up to you all. I mean, they may vary immensely from one to the other. I have one Barber program that has contacted me several times and said, basically for me to guide them through it, and I really can't, simply because it's a business concept. It's what, do you want to write your own? We've seen one that succeeded. The Natural Hairstyling School did their own thing. Her son was into technology. She developed it. She taped it. She figured it out. We tested it. We liked it. We've seen another one that doesn't seem to all the pieces be running, and so we are doing our due diligence by evaluating it. I believe in October we'll present it to read it. And then the one that this board approved, kind of not quite split, but kind of looking at it, that is an existing software and system that's around. So I don't know. I mean, we're welcome to create a committee. I guess the only thing I don't know what the request will look like, because they vary.
I mean, I would imagine it would be the same standards that we hope for in any, teaching environment.
Well, just like in the delivery and the accountability and things like that, schools and people who want to do these programs, I feel like, are going to want to have some. Well, maybe they don't want boundaries, but I think it would work to protect the students better, which is really the consumer in this case. If we can figure out a way to at least put some boundaries on this stuff. We spend a lot of hours listening to these things and trying to piece together what we think can work. And just like with today, we hope that'll go forward, and certainly we all want it to be successful. But to wait and look at it after it's out there and people are tied up in it, and they've got money invested and some commitment to it, and then not work out, it's probably a little bit dangerous for them. So,
Are you thinking more of a framework type?
Yeah, just a framework,
Sort of have-to-haves, bullet points of what would be required for consideration type thing?
Yeah, nothing heavy-handed, but if there's a list of items that we consistently are trying to look for, maybe if we can verbalize that or codify that in some way that makes it more clear of what we're looking for.
Well, I just read something in here about online, that
we have the ability to review them.
Yes, I was going to say this current draft of rules, that was one of the things we talked about previously, and this current draft addresses those to an extent by identifying that it needs to basically disable the ability to skip through content and then meet at least one of the other following qualifications. It also says that you all have the discretion to require internal and or external reviews of any online, virtual, or electronic teacher training program, and so that's something that you all may want to explore further. In what situations would you all want to have these reviews, and by whom?
What would that look like, and that kind of stuff,
etc. So I think these rules, this current draft touches on it, but there's probably more discussion to be had. I think, as Roxana mentioned, there will be challenges with that. Each one will probably need to be on a case-by-case basis to an extent, because the facts are going to vary in every situation. Today's presentation used the My Lady platform, and so I think that was a totally different situation from maybe someone who's using a platform that they created, using something that the board is familiar with, something about. And so I think it would certainly be helpful for the board to kind of have its ideas fleshed out a little bit before the next one comes up. I don't know that it would need to be a standing committee, maybe.
No. I mean, just something to have some, maybe get together and have some recommendations made that we can come back and, again, just to kind of codify a little bit of what we're looking for, a little bit of what we think is going to give some protection, at least in some minimum way. Simple things like, if we have the authority to review, but is it better to review after the fact or prior to authorizing? Little things like that.
Giving us homework.
Trying to prevent a lot of homework.
Trying to prevent a lot of stuff down the road. In order to do something like that, is that something that we can, maybe at the next meeting, if we need to appoint a committee, then let everybody think about it, and if you want to do it or not, I don't, what's the procedure for that, Roxana?
I think that's how we went about doing the complaint committee and the reciprocity, with the thought that they wouldn't need to meet if
No.
there was no need. And for a while, we had a rulemaking committee because we were in the middle of the apprenticeship
Yes.
rules, and
Yes.
it took us so long. If you all that were on it remember, they met every time because we had to move those heavy rules. So this could be, a committee to review schools moving into the future, just anything along those lines, and just a chance for you all to talk together, because you can only do that on the record, and kind of pose those concerns, thoughts, ideas. I mean, among the things that we, have at our disposal are those exams. I think
Right.
Mr.
That's
Gambuza
a
pointed
great
that
point.
out. We can look at those results. I don't know how easy it would be to say your students haven't been testing well, therefore, but we have seen, and for those of you that have attended sessions this year, PSI is reflecting that the practical, the students that are doing apprenticeship are testing a little bit better. And I didn't think it'd come this quickly, so we are actually seeing that.
That was my first concern, is if you're going to dive down and hold under the microscope training that a student gets via their computer, as opposed to a person standing in front of them, the test scores would be really the only thing to determine what was working and what wasn't. And then do you dare say, are these number of hours really required for every student? I mean, you could go on forever, you know.
So, I'll ask you that if you think about that a little bit, maybe at our next meeting, if you feel that way, maybe we can set a committee and meet at least a couple of times at convenient. It doesn't have to be some long thing, but if you want to have a committee, we'll do that real quickly and maybe get ahead of this curve a little bit. So,
it's not like it's going to slow
It's
down.
coming, yes.
Let me ask, for a brick and mortar school, do we have in place, like if they have so many failing students that we do,
No, right now for none of the schools. We have the ability to look at the results, and I do so depending on the need and what it's for. I've looked at scores, but otherwise, no, we've never done.
Well, I don't know that it's that our job to do that. I mean, if students aren't passing the exams, then they can't get their license, and then they're going to have to do something else. I mean, I think so. If we're not double checking and having some kind of criteria for these brick and mortar schools, we can't really do the same for online. I mean, it comes down to if they're going to be able to pass the test, then they can get their license.
They're learning the material.
Yeah, that's it. It's just
It's pretty much going to control itself.
Yeah.
Another thing to think about, I think we've seen, like right now we're renewing cosmetology schools. They're renewing, I mean, within minutes I'm getting this. So they're doing fantastic with the online piece. Things are moving really good. But we've seen from the time I started in 2013 a huge drop in numbers, if you will. I had 85 schools, we're at 70. So percentage-wise, that's a big drop in numbers. We've probably have a couple more of the Barber schools, and that 70 includes our specialty schools, and we have a lot of specialty now. But we've picked up numbers of smaller schools in one particular part of the state, and a couple of those are already thinking of closing. So similar to the exams, we don't say, here's the number of students for you to succeed, and we don't get into all of that. If they're not doing whatever it takes to succeed, they may not be open a long time, but at least these schools that may be closing, the students are going to finish, and I guess it's a lesson on how to run a business. I don't have the answer. I just know that we don't overstep in that area either.
I don't think that's really not kind of the direction I was thinking in. I'm thinking more in the delivery. How do we ensure that records are being kept properly on these students? Just like she had this nice format from MindTap. We the instructors, we know what MindTap is, and that's a great one right there. But I'm sure we're not going to get that every time. So at least having some kind of foundation under it. So just think about it. If you don't want to do it, we won't do it. But just something to throw out there. Okay?
And I can put it on the agenda for October. It would be helpful for those that say, what is the board expecting to see?
Exactly.
And right now, We just point them to the rules and laws, obviously, and we don't want to create a policy with what to have. But since it's so new, it would be okay to say the board has looked at several, and here's the minimum that they're wanting to see.
Right.
Whether they
It would be
present it or
helpful.
not.
If I was going to set up a program like that, it'd be helpful to me to at least know what the target is.
Some bonus.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
And I will say, I'm not sure what recommendations will come from the committee, but depending on what they are, they may need to become actual rules, depending on what they are.
See what fleshes out. Okay. Is there anything else come to the board?
Bang that thing, will you?
What?
Got a motion to adjourn.
We have a
Second.
motion. Everybody can adjourn except Frank.
Frank's got to do overtime.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations. We did it
Thank
again.
you. We are adjourned, 1:15.
Except Frank, poor Frank.
Hey, tell me about that HR thing. I'm not showing anything. That HR thing.
Patty?
Oh, you got it, Frank. You got it.
I just went way back.
Huh?